This is another episode of Summoning Insight, aka two irrelevant boomers who are only made relevant, follow me on the logic here, via their Twitter, a medium where you say things, and on talk shows, a medium where you say things. Are you ready? If we say things. But other than that, we're irrelevant. So this is how relevance works, guys. If there's someone out there you've never heard of, they've never done anything, and you don't care about them, then the second they say something on a talk show or a tweet, you'll be magnetically drawn to it and have to, no, you won't. That'd be someone very relevant must have said something, which is why it became relevant. So basically, we're back. If you don't know, I actually think in my back and forth recently with Caedrel, he actually made a very sort of valid point, which is, to be fair, even I got caught in the whirlwind. And we did actually draw out what was just a fucking tweet from Monty. One tweet from Monty required a week of everyone in the world having to pass judgment and form on one line in the sand. And then even I got caught, and even when he pointed out, like, haven't we sort of made enough content? I was like, yeah, you're actually right, Caedrel. Why are we just making like 700 videos? And you must admit it's lying. I'd like to cross-examine the witness. Sustained. It actually did go too far. But I tell you what, the one good thing is this: as usual, you can never beat us, guys. This show is a hall of mirrors reflecting back our own greatness to us. We are so insanely relevant, Monty, that it is true when we just make stupid tweet. I wasn't even stupid; it was actually an interesting tweet. But when we make comments that are potentially incendiary, the whole scene burns. The whole scene burns. It turns out it was us after all, Monty. It was us all along. We are him and them.
What I found so funny about Caedrel's response is that he basically took this as an opportunity to be a React Andy and just like not even, he just addresses like the outrage and doesn't actually address the point that I'm trying to make.
And there's one thing I will say though, I just want to correct one thing, because I actually will apologize to Caedrel for this. I only saw a part of his video, like when he was looking at your tweets. It turns out later on, he actually did say, he was the only one who said this, aside maybe Dom or something. He actually did say no one would know lane swaps better than you. Apparently he did say that. So if he did say that, fair play. That's a cool acknowledgement. Because by the way, his fans don't want to hear that. I'll tell you that.
Well, I mean, it's also the fact that, Caedrel is very careful about what he says these days, because basically, he tries to not enrage any of the major fan bases, and it's an effective tactic. I mean, I can't argue his whatever 100,000 concurrent viewers. Yeah, I mean, he's making millions of dollars. So yeah, I mean, he's riding the wave. But at the same time, unfortunately, if you actually engage with my point seriously, unfortunately, you must come to the conclusion that BDS is dumb or they knew. And those are really the only conclusions. So he's not really into flaming at this point in time, I've noticed. His level of flaming has been going down. It's like the flaming versus glazing ratio is now, he's like a donut shop. He's all glazing, no flaming at this point in time. I found it even funny this weekend, Thorin, because I was at the LCK Finals. It was a great experience. Had a really nice time. And I was tweeting from the audience. And obviously, I'm like, I'm watching this in a huge arena in Korean, way away from the monitor. And I just was like, it's funny that Genji just walked into a Sand Soldier choke with Faker. And apparently Caedrel said on his stream that anybody who says that is trying to kill the hype of esports, even though it is any coach will tell you, by the way, and I'm not trying to take away from Faker's play because I think Caedrel was right. It is an amazing play. But at the same time, when you're in a 5 versus 2, you killed their jungler and you have a Kalista with 1,000,000 spears and Elder Drake, any coach is going to say, fucking finish the Elder Drake. You have Baron, go finish the game. You do not walk into the Azir choke. And sure, Faker made a great play. It was a really sick quadra. Should that have ever happened? No.
Obvious question. Someone who's an expert being a coach themselves. I will just present the obvious counterpiece of evidence. Pays. Right, bro, is it... let's see. Let's just say, you won't know yet, but you'll see when this is coming up. Pays is on that fucking secret T1 payroll. This is a joke. Fucking, he is another sleeper agent like Chovy, mate. What the fuck was he doing in those finals? Like, he was trying his absolute best to fucking replace Gumayushi next year, I'm guessing, because fucking hell, mate. You really wanted them. Even in the last game, he was trying to lose it. It's like, this is mental, mate. This guy is fucking... He was cooked. Chovy really had to hard carry that fucking team, mate. It was mental.
I mean... Keen had 3 good games, like especially game 1 and game 5. Keen was great. But
he shouldn't have been the MVP though.
No, Chovy should have been the MVP, obviously.
But here's are you ready? This is where Faker fans can't get it. Do you know why Keane was the MVP? Because, guys, one, people didn't know he was the best because he hadn't won yet. And two, it was less expected he would gap his lane opponent. Everyone knew Faker would get gapped by Chovy. That's for real why he won. You know the concept, Monty. In sports, they often do give the MVP, if there's two performances like that, to the guy who's the least likely to have had the breakout performance, because then they go, he's the X factor. To actually be the best player and win, you often have to just be the one who carries all the games, or you're the only factor. So I think actually people get bored of giving it to the Fakers and Chovies of the world. Well, Faker a long time ago.
I think there are several reasons why Keane got the MVP. His Rumble game in game number 1 was extremely good, but it's also recency bias. Like, obviously, when push came to shove, people will point to Fakers like riding the Rift Herald in game 5 with Orianna, but really the single biggest factor was Keane just getting a couple solo kills in lane against AS. Sure, that was, I mean, turning him into the raid boss Cassante was absolutely, the single biggest factor in the start of that snowball, even though Faker did make the mistake. But also, to your point, Thorin, the mid lane matchup was actually hilariously closer than it has been the last few finals between Chovy and Faker. But also, I think people don't really understand. Well, I mean, it's obvious people don't really understand League of Legends, but especially in this case, because you look at it and you're like, these lane states are kind of even. Yeah, okay, guys, you realize Faker is playing Hail of Blades Azir to try and win lane, and he's going even against Corki. Like, dude, his Orianna has been insanely dominant. He was undefeated this year on Orianna, and it was banned every game against him virtually throughout these playoffs. Especially by Hanwha Life, actually Genji in their last series banned it. Hanwha actually left it up one game, which was a very bad mistake. And in game 5, for Genji to have the balls to leave the Orianna up or available, have Faker pick it, and then have Chovy play Corki into it, and that level of confidence. It's pretty alpha by Chovy, in my opinion.
By the way, he didn't just play it. Or everyone, would always complain about Chovy and the idea that, in the big moment, he would be hesitant, would he? He did, the fucking LPL, lunatic flash fucking package. That was also, this is what I love when chokers turn it around, Monty. It's because when a choker, this is what a fan doesn't get. The fan who revels in the choker, haha, he's just not good enough. It's no, the joke is he is good enough, but he chokes. That's why he chokes. Well, here's the problem, as anyone who watched Device in Counter-Strike will know. The moment they stop choking, everyone better fucking lock everything down, because these motherfuckers can't be controlled. And you saw it now. By the way, I think you saw it at Worlds last year. If you go watch that BLG series, Chovy has some fucking amazing ones in that one. It isn't him who loses that one, mate. That was a very, very good team he lost to. I think this was a great example of where, everyone who's going to do the Faker thing of okay, Chovy gets to have 4, but Faker has 10. 1, the difference between 4 and 10 is massive compared to 1 or 2 and 10. And then if you don't know, I've always said this about winning. The problem with only judging people for coming first place is it's binary. You can either come first or you don't. But that means when you start to come first, you can rack that record up very fast. And first of all, by the way, any more wins in a row is just making an unbeatable record of wins in a row, 5 in a row. No one will ever do that. And then, look, it's still unlikely he can ever get to 10, because let's face it, there's 2 per year and he needs to have 3 more years worth of winning every split. That's very unlikely for anyone. But if anyone ever had a chance to do it, this is the guy. This guy could do it. Right now, he is in his absolute peak. He looks like there's no downside yet. No one knows it, and actually what will happen, that'll depend on your team too. But in LCK right now, you'd be a fool not to bet on this guy to win every single split from here on out. He's that good.
I think his level is absolutely crazy. There are several things that he has going for him. First off is obviously his huge champion pool, and his laning was always good. But now, the last few years, he hasn't had bums. I mean, his time on Hanwha, he had fucking bums around him. And he was still extremely good. If people tell me the DRX and HLE ones are like Chovy choking at Worlds, go look who they play, you daft cunt, and who's on his team. The joke is, by the way, some of the people on his team, he even let stick around for long enough, like Doran, to help them win too. And they were fucking bums back then. Carrier wasn't Carrier from T1 when he was on DRX, guys. He was good. He was like a rookie, you know what I mean? So I think people, they take the old narrative, which was the case in Griffin and those teams, and then maybe like MSI last year, and they just stretch that to retcon his whole career,
know? Like, I think he's primed, mate. That's why the sickest thing is now, if Knight can get it done, maybe we for real get the Knight versus Chovy matchup that we never got in Faker versus Rookie. Maybe we actually get that for real now, because with double limit MSI and so many teams going to Worlds, we're going to have a very good chance to see these guys play like 10 international tournaments together and hopefully meet finally.
Well, the thing is, BLG and Gen.G are already going to MSI, right? So it would be in a double elimination bracket, you're likely to see this matchup unless one of them manages to choke twice, which is unusual. Right. So I think we probably get at least one best of 5 of Knight versus Chovy, especially Thorin, because they changed the way the MSI bracket works this year. So we can't have the same region on the same side of the bracket.
Yes. So
that is going to help make that true even more, which I think is I'm not sure I think it's a good change. Like, I know the fans.
It's actually ruins competitive integrity, man.
Yeah. So,
you know what I mean?
Everybody's hyped up about this change. But realistically, like, for competitive integrity reasons, it's not amazing.
Here's the obvious reason why they're so dumb, right? They're doing it from the Riot, absolutely delusional utopian view that all regions could be identically equal strength, which they think makes it fair. Because it's the opposite, and actually regions have mismatches and imbalances. It means, I'll give you the example, even if you're a Korean fan, it's bad. Because what if Korea next year had the 4 best teams in the world, and now like one of them has an insanely hard time to come second, even though they are second best in the world, because the bracket means the LPL team gets to go straight to the upper bracket final. Like, you see what I mean? Like, you actually don't want things like that, guys. In general, the reason they've done that is this, because Riot is so fucking blind. They're just going off the results of last MSI. And Monty, it isn't even the Asian teams. Everyone was just salty that the Western teams weren't good enough to win a series, and then they played each other in the lower bracket. Actually, changing the lower bracket and who the top teams play to sort the shitters in the lower bracket so they can decide, Monty, you ready? Whether they come 8th or like 6th. Give me a fucking, you know what I mean? This is garbage. This is Riot in a nutshell, isn't it? What are you doing, boys? What are you doing?
And also, you know, the funny thing is that because we have double elimination, it's not like the finals isn't going to be the best matchup, right? So it was not really a change that needed to be.
Gen.G T1 needed to beat BLG. It's not the fault of the fucking bracket, mate. BLG beat them. What do you want? What you can do is just go actually, and then another rule: if 2 Asian teams make it, like one must be Korean. Like, what's the next rule? Like the fucking Faker rule or something?
Yeah, exactly. Faker gets automatically seeded into all finals to break viewership records.
No, the joke is, Monty, you're saying that like a fucking parody, but you can't parody T1 fans, because are you ready? If you actually did as Riot tomorrow via Mark Merrill announce on Twitter that you were going to invoke something called the Faker GOAT rule, and it says that when Faker is eliminated from a tournament, his team waits and plays the winner of the final in an ultimate showdown match to see if they're the greatest team of all time. Fans would actually say, well, that's totally justified. You know, Faker is the final boss, and you'd have to beat Faker to prove that you'd buy. People would actually buy into it, Monty. I actually think that would be a popular change. Like, if you made that fucking insane competitive integrity destroying move, I think fans would actually cheer. They would fucking, yeah, I love Riot now. They fucking love it, man. Even though it would be the death of everything we love in League of Legends, you know.
Well, I mean, to be fair, there wasn't much there to love in the first place. You know, the death of the remaining things to love, because Riot's formats have been shit since the dawn of League Esports, basically. Oh. But you know, it's okay, because now they've discovered within themselves a strong desire to open back up to third-party tournament organizers and more international events. It's weird that they had this sudden epiphany that coincided perfectly with the opening of the Saudi Arabian purse. It's very strange that would happen right at exactly the same time.
Mate, it's fucking Arabian Nights. Mark Merrill's been shown a whole new world, guys. And you know what? He's coming there. We're all going there. We're all erupting now, mate.
He's up in the Cave of Wonders.
By the way, to rewind it a little bit, because obviously on this show we can go wherever we want. That's actually the secret of this show. I wanted to ask you specifically, though, right? I saw the Power Spike episode. I obviously referenced it in my video. And I think you were way too kind to Doublelift. Because here's the problem, Monty. There's just... listen, I think I'm pretty good at telling when someone's lying, right? This is Doublelift being stupid. Him being stupid is when he'll do stuff like his chat will tell him, like, and this other team did it. And he'll go, I think that other team did it. And then when someone goes, no, they didn't, he goes, but, well, the chat said it. And like, that's being stupid. That's not even looking at it. That's ignorance, right? Ignorance and stupidity go hand in hand. Doublelift, I have to say, Monty, I think he actually, in the same way as you think BDS got the leaks, I think he must be lying. Here's why. There's no way someone like, he's not an idiot in terms of actual intelligence, guys. He's more stupid because he just speaks and doesn't think. There's no way he actually said that a lane swap is where you swap your 2v2, so you don't have to do the 2v2 laning. And then in the next sentence explained that the strat that him and BDS did was to have a Scion invade and dive bot and then go normal laning. There's no way one human said those two sentences, not very far apart, and didn't ever think, I've just said a totally different thing there. That's, to me, Monty, this. He said the correct thing first because he was explaining what a lane swap is so that he could explain what you were talking about. Then he didn't have a fucking example except Nip FPX because the only other one apparently is like Team Liquid from 2019. But he was trying to pretend in the last year everyone did it. So his brain went, fuck, I hate Monty and he can't be right. So quickly put in something where it looks like a lane swap before it happens and it has Scion. And then he just picked a load of examples of Scion and not a single one was a lane swap. I just refuse to believe he doesn't know what a lane swap is. He has to know what a lane swap is.
So they're actually I went back and I watched. There actually is a lane swap that happened in the C9 versus Team Liquid finals during the pandemic, the one with perks.
2021? Okay.
Yeah, in 2021. There actually is a lane swap in that final.
Wait, he couldn't reference it, even though A, 3 years ago, and 2, totally irrelevant to whether everyone sees them right now and does them, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, I love the way everyone kept saying, no, but it doesn't matter how many times Doublelift is wrong. The only thing that matters is that Monty produces hard proof of a speculation on Twitter. No, that's called cognitive dissonance, guys. You're not going to let the facts in your brain because they destroy who you think Doublelift is. So, like, that is a mental example, too, because you notice that's also 2021. Team Liquid one was fucking 2019. Spoiler, there hasn't been one recently. That's why it was only Nip FPX. That's the only example you can give. And by the way, Nip FPX, wasn't that like not even with the Sire? Wasn't that like Udyr or something?
It was Udyr, yeah.
Yeah, so the whole thing, but you see the site, shut the fuck. Listen, I don't care who you are for that one. I don't care if you're Caedrel. I don't care. Even if you're Dom, if you think seeing a Scion means it's a lane swap, shut your fucking mouth. No one did before that because that was the first one.
The odds are it's some kind of shenanigans, right? But the point
that... Invade. Obviously, you could have been covering the invade, but that's why your point in the video was very apt. They didn't just cover the invade. They gambled that it was exactly what it was, and it was that, and they even lost the game afterwards because they BDS.
Which is funny.
That's just fucking karmic justice, isn't it?
The funny thing is, like, if you're trying to make some sort of argument that the BDS Scion strategy that Doublelift referenced, you know, like a Scion dive, I mean, basically, they didn't even try and counteract that because they warded bot side jungle, but G2 knew the wards were there, so they could have actually four-manned through the bot lane through Tribrush, and they would have just set themselves up, and then BDS would have initiated the lane swap because their bot lane would have then gone top. They would have gotten the lane swap. They would have basically given G2 the best scenario, and the jungle scenario, it would have just been a jungle invade with the Scion, and if they went bot, there would have been a four-man dive under the bot turret. Yep. So, like, basically, that's why I struggle with the fact that they had allegedly no prior knowledge, because 5 stacking on red could have just given up the lane swap to G2. And, like, you don't know if they're going to invade. And also, like, your junglers in fucking River not even starting a camp when the camp spawns, so he's going to be behind. I mean, the whole thing is just really fucking weird. And, look, like I said earlier, you either have to believe that BDS is dumb enough to do this. You know, that's what nobody talked about. My interpretation, Thorin, is actually generous to the intelligence of BDS, because if I am forced to believe that they did not know this was the case, then I have to call them bad. You have to. Like, just because it worked out for them doesn't mean it was a good call.
Monty, I'll tell you what, your birthday is a while from now. It's on the 19th of October. So I'll tell you what, I will make a pledge to you right now. Either on your birthday or before, I will reveal publicly what actually happened in that scenario. I will find out for you, and I will find out if it was in fact a leak. Just that's all I'm going to say.
Impressive.
I will find out. Just wait and see. I will do that for you, just as a gift for you. Just because on this particular one, I think it's interesting. You know,
if I am vindicated, and, like, look, guys, if you find out the opposite, Thorin, you know, go ahead, tell the truth. Yeah, no worries. I'll just take the L on that one.
By the way, I even said in my video, I think where you messed up is this. I wouldn't have put the clear as day part because when you make a speculation,
I worded it badly.
You want to leave you want to leave a little bit of room for ambiguity. I know what you mean. What you meant is like essentially what you did is what you would say in a green room. You'd go like, "What the fuck? Look at this setup. They obviously know it's coming." You did that, but the only reason I bring that up as well, Monty, I don't blame you for this. Is I always say I never say anyone cheated in Counter-Strike. Like you have to say I think they cheated if you're a journalist because you have to have proof otherwise. That's just a very difficult set of protocols to put in place. Like normal people don't speak that way. It's just that when you're like a big figure, you just have to figure out this sort of, you have to fucking like do like a devil's advocate against yourself before you hit send tweet afterward is the problem. So that's not the end of the world. But I knew you said I think. I noticed everyone deleted I think and just put like it's only. In fact, the maddest thing of all, let's address this one last thing. Goes like this. The stupidest response was the notion BDS were the cheaters. No, they were just given the spoiler to the movie. You can't unknow the spoiler. And then two, it was the idea, causing you all out there don't know the pro scene and you only listen to dickhead streamers. You think that a leak means they saw a video of the game. You don't know that a leak could literally be random G2 player, not even G2, no, sorry, someone like on Vitality just DMs someone like Labrov, by the way, if they get like a Scion, watch out for a swap. Like that could be it. That could be all it was. That's all you need. You only need one player.
It couldn't even been watch out. It could have just been like, lol, we just finished this scrim block and it was hard because G2 was lane swapping. Like it could be something as innocuous as that, you know? So.
Just something in the back of your mind, so when you see the draft, you think, oh, at least, yeah, exactly. But people made it sound like what you actually said was, fuck BDS, they cheated, and I demand something be done about it. That's what everyone made out like you said.
And yeah, and by the way, a BDS player like reading a Discord message or having small talk with another player who drops that is not BDS's fault. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. In every esport. And also, it's not BDS's fault. It's not like they asked. It's not like they did anything. It's not cheating by BDS. Like there's nothing they can do about this and that scenario. So, I mean, it would be different.
You know this, Monty. Anyone who's been in a team knows leaks happen all the time. It's the reason why I've always said the poaching rules are objectively insane, because it's like the idea that, like, you know how like rich people sort of scam their taxes a bit. It's just about don't get audited and then have like a very clever lawyer. Everyone's doing it. The point is just don't get caught. That's what the rules say. Everyone's poaching all the time. The point is you can't stop these fuckers texting messages to each other. Even if you had them on lockdown, they're going to go home and go on their phone. Like, you can't stop the info leaking out. It's why, by the way, roster moves will always leak. Any org that still goes, we'd like to announce it first. We'll live in another world, DAFCON. Like, that's not the world you live in now. That ship sailed years and years ago. So the idea, like, fans are like, oh my God, you're implying they would get a leak. Mate, some of your favourite players have gotten leaks. I mean, I've said it before. Some of your favourite players are match-fixed, motherfucker. Sit down. Sit down if you don't know what you're talking about in this industry. And by the way, then when people come out, no, Thorin, to make that statement, you have to show me hard proof on Twitter that would get you killed by the triads. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say, nah, I don't actually. And I don't have a court compelling me to say that. So I could just say, in those cases, I know what happened. But on some of them, I think it happened. So there we go. It's all good. It's all good.
All right. Well, guys,
what's the new drama? What are we doing now?
If you would like, by the way, to have some security when you are poaching players for your new roster, I would suggest that you utilize a virtual private network, right, guys? Of course, by that I mean our sponsor, ExpressVPN. They're back for another week. Watching Netflix without using ExpressVPN is like going to a casino and only being able to play on the slot machines. Why limit yourself like that? The big money's somewhere else. As we've said many times, you know, different titles are available on different streaming services depending on your geolocation. ExpressVPN can help you unlock that, which is very convenient to check all your content, especially if you guys are watching our culture channel and want to, of course, legally watch all of the films. So there you go. Can follow along with us.
I've got a weird angle to say as well, which is this, Monty. You might even think, but isn't that immoral? No, because here's the thing. Technically, it says that particular service is only available in that location. With a VPN, you're in that location. That's how the internet works. Yeah. Congratulations. That's how hyperspace works, guys. So,
and also, you know, the licensing fee is still getting paid, guys, when you watch that content. You know, it's the same thing. Like I've said before, there are certain services while I'm in Korea, such as Max and Hulu, that I like to watch. Okay?
Of course.
I use EVPN. ExpressVPN works every single time for those. It's been the best one. I pay for these services. I pay for them. You can pay for them too. So we do suggest, obviously, that you do that. But, ExpressVPN, very useful. And especially, in Korea, there's public Wi-Fi everywhere. And if you are on public Wi-Fi and you do not use a VPN on your phone, you are actually throwing, guys. That is so dumb because anybody could be scraping your web traffic in that situation. So it's a great app to have on your phone. It runs in the background the entire time. I have not had any noticeable difference in speed in terms of my phone usage as a result. I am on ExpressVPN as we are recording this show because Twitch in Korea doesn't automatically save the VODs. And I am doing you guys a solid because I know a lot of you guys watch the Twitch VODs of this show before it's released on YouTube and in the edited format. And so I VPN into Japan in order to make that a reality for you. So thank you very much to ExpressVPN. It has been great to have them as a sponsor. And if you are not using a VPN, this is a very cheap way for additional security, as well as many, many other things you can use it for. So be smart. Stop paying full price for streaming services and only getting access to a fraction of their content. Get your money's worth at expressvpn.com/summoning. Don't forget to use my link at expressvpn.com/summoning to get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. So it's been great. Has been the best VPN that I have used while I've been here in Korea in terms of accessing content, that's for sure. So thank you very much to ExpressVPN. And as usual, guys. Yeah.
One, I actually did, I won't say with who yet, I actually did an interview with someone who was in China via that exact VPN recently. So it did hold up, didn't disconnect during the whole call. And then two, this is the second detail. The actual thing I really wanted to ask you was this. This is when I knew Doublelift had done the Star Trek engineering move, Monty. He was like, Captain, we're running dangerously low on the brain power at this point in time. And he was like, divert dilithium crystals from phasers to engines immediately. And what he did was he put pure haterism into his game. And here's what he did, Monty. This actually is why I know he's a liar. It completely beggars belief. You might not have seen this part of his video. He tried to suggest, for real, he wasn't aware you'd been around in League of Legends since you were in Overwatch. And then he even tried to imply in the same stream that, like, oh, wait, didn't Overwatch end it? Did he? He tried to imply you just came back recently from Overwatch, even though here's why I'm going to immediately say in cross-examination, he's a liar. Then why were you so salty about the TSM Holy War and Lena and Dardoch?
Yep.
I wasn't.
Hey, Thorin, can you remind me, was that on this show, Summoning Insight, about League of Legends, where we talked about a lot of other League of Legends things on that same show? It's weird that I would be doing a podcast about League of Legends years ago now.
It's crazy. It's crazy, mate.
I mean,
people don't know, when Monty wasn't in League, we did stop this show. We went and did one called Oversight, which was just Summoning Insight for Overwatch. By the way, the hilarious thing is, all we got told the whole time in that game was we're irrelevant. Why do pros go on the show, even though we just kept racking up the best guests? Then what happened is when Monty left the game, we just fucked off and came back to League.
Yep.
He also tried to, no, to be fair, it was Reddit who implied this. The other one that was mad, by the way, was where they took that interview he did with Loco, where we both went to the LCS that one time. And in it, Loco goes, would you ever come back to League? And he explicitly means it in the context of casting for Riot. And then when you say no, everyone's like, look at him, he's back in League. It's like, yeah, I've seen him cast in loads of fucking tournaments for Riot. Like, but to making content, he can't make it. And by the way, it's like Richard Lewis when he implied, he never said he was retiring, but he implied he was stepping away from the game. Is he not allowed to change his mind 3 years later? Like, why would that make you a liar? It wasn't like some promise, like, I promise till the end of time, this is all that's happening. Like, you can change your mind like 4 years later, you idiots. What the fuck is this?
Well, also, it was that question that Loco asked me. I mean, I remember doing that interview with him was very specifically about me coming back to casting or working with Riot in some capacity. And the answer to that is still no. You know, I got in, you guys have to remember, I got into League of Legends esports before Riot existed as a tournament organizer. When I was working in League of Legends, my main job was never at any point working for Riot Games because they hadn't taken over LCK yet. I did literally one MSI because I boycotted the second one and 3 world championships. That was the extent of my working with Riot. I chose not to attend an MSI that they invited me to because their rates were shit. And I chose not to do any of their all-star events because I didn't want to do show matches. like I didn't want to do for fun show matches. So I actually turned down probably like 3 All-Stars and 2 or 3 All-Stars, I forget.
Oh.
And then 1 MSI.
MSI. Yeah.
And I did 3 World Championships and 1 MSI, but 95% of my work in League of Legends was just for OGN. You know, I did how many IEM events did I do? 4? I did the same number of work for ESL. I think I did 2 IEM Katowices and 2 IEM San Jose's. So I did the same amount of work for ESL in League of Legends that I did for Riot in terms of number of events. So it was never really, I just didn't want to work with Riot. It's one of the reasons why I came to Korea in the first place. I came to Korea before LCS existed. I had done a season of OGN Champions before LCS even started. So there really was no opportunity in the States. And before LCS began, I didn't work with Riot at any point in time. I was doing my own tournaments that I was running, or I was just doing news coverage. Right? So, I mean, like the idea that I am desperate to come back and work for Riot. I mean, my point is, it's like I did this for the love of the game of League of Legends and the love of esports. And I wasn't working with Riot for almost all of my work in League of Legends. And so I don't think it's weird for me to want to come back and do content in the space because it gets viewership. And I obviously enjoyed it because I was doing it for no money prior to ever working at OGN. I was actually losing money.
Oh, no, don't worry. No good deed ever goes unpunished. That's the way esports works, mate. Again, when we give people thousands of hours of free content, we just did that for like our own self-aggrandizement, in fact. I don't know why, because I despise fucking random plebs. Like, not most, look, the ones that don't comment, you're cool. The ones who comment, the reason I don't give you the time of day is I actually despise you. Like, I would absolutely remove you from the channel if I, look, put it this way, they used to be able to block users for YouTube. I'm glad they removed that feature. I would have blocked so many people. Here's the thing that I want to ask you though is, when people say that though, Monty, you have to understand this is how like systems work within ecosystems. Normal plebs only see the hierarchy and they believe your dream is always to just go through the traditional hierarchy. And so if you say otherwise, they think it's cope or a lie. Because I get the same thing, Monty. Anyone who actually knows the industry knows there's a reason why ESL and Blast have never flamed me publicly. Because I turned them down. I told them I wouldn't work with them anymore when they wanted to work with me. So instead, a pleb will just tell me, you don't get hired by ESL anymore, because in their mind, I want to be an analyst only, and the best analyst jobs are working ESL events. So obviously, if I don't have those jobs, I must desperately want it, and I must have been rejected. So it's the same thing for you. It wasn't that you fought back against Riot, and actually, by the way, in doing so, made probably at this point like $1 million collectively for all the other talent, got them all extra opportunities, allowed them even chances to work on the broadcast while still being freelance. The whole reason why you couldn't have Monty on every final is because he was freelance and he wasn't working for Riot. All the things that everyone wanted. No. It's just that Riot didn't want you and you're not good enough. And so you're like on the Mark Merrill train of like, congrats for having a game you can make a living off or something. Some shit like that, I guess. Nice gaslighting as usual.
I mean, I did, for my sanity, I didn't look in that Reddit thread a lot, but one of the many things that tilted me, I know you dove in there in your video, and I appreciate that, Thorin, was like the commentary on Last Free Nation on the Reddit thread is just so fucking hilarious. Because they try and talk about the shows that we do and the numbers on the shows, and they try and say things like Euphoria and The Dive have larger viewerships than Summoning Insight, which is like not true, guys. Like basically Euphoria only distributes on YouTube and podcast platforms. And while I guess I can't technically know what their Spotify numbers are, if they are in line with our Spotify numbers by percentage, we distribute just frankly on more platforms. We do this show live on Twitch. We do it live on YouTube. And we also have Twitch VOD views and then the live VOD views that we get from these shows also, which bolster our numbers pretty darn significantly.
Dude, it's just this show doesn't even have guests. They have the biggest guests in the world. We don't even have guests and we get the same numbers on YouTube sometimes.
Yeah. And it really is just the YouTube VOD you guys are looking at, but you have to remember that there's probably 20,000-30,000 views that you're not actually seeing just on the YouTube and Twitch, and then more than that on Spotify and other podcast platforms.
I mean,
right?
As you just said, mate, there's some people who are tuning in like in an hour from now or now, and they haven't watched the first part, and they're going to watch the Twitch
rewind
one
on
after
YouTube.
this. That's never going to count on YouTube, but we can count those numbers, guys.
Well, it's also that the YouTube Live is separate from the edited YouTube, and the YouTube Live part is privated. So you guys, after it's live, you guys don't get to go back and look at the past broadcast. So as soon as we release the edited version, the old version is just removed. Well, it's not removed, but it's hidden, right? And it's just the process that we go through. So like, it's just, it was super weird to see these takes because like the numbers that they're playing with are just wrong. And they're insisting that they're right and we have lower viewership. And like you said, Thorin, we don't have guests. And Euphoria was bigger last year when they had Caedrel, but now that Caedrel's not on the podcast anymore, numbers have gone down pretty significantly for them. And also, if you want to take that approach too, the thing is you actually have to look at the number of episodes of Summoning Insight and other shows we do every year. We do probably 48 episodes of Summoning Insight, which is way more than any other League podcast. And it's also about the total aggregate of viewed hours. Across just our league shows, guys, we probably do around 800,000 to 1 million downloads a month, just on league. So not counting Counter-Strike, not counting the sports, not counting the culture stuff. And like I said, last year, in the middle of last year, I tweeted out that we had done 10 million podcast downloads in the last 12 months, and like we've grown. So, the LFN network is actually quite large.
We've proven the test case. Like, for example, not only have we shown Summoning Insight doesn't even need guests, we don't bother having guests anymore. But if you think about it, right, the best damn league show, what would everyone have said? Just carry by Dom. No one wants to hear you. Right, I don't have Dom or any top 10 name except the 2 episodes, 1 per split that Dom does. And the other episodes average like 20k views. It's just me and then people that you wouldn't even click on a YouTube video of talking about the game week to week, for fuck's sake. I even think myself, why do people watch that one? I'm not a mega expert. Like, I'm trying to go in the minutiae of that shit. But I'm really good at stimulating conversation and drawing out the other person. If you don't know, by the way, I intentionally even give opinions that aren't that good in the sense that I'm just not an amazing expert because the other person's going to bounce off me and give a straight fire one. Like, mate, this last episode we had last week, I would tell people, if you haven't watched it, this one will shock you. That guy, Memento, used to be a jungler in the LEC. I saw from his Twitter, I was watching him for like 6 months, mate. He's actually a really good analyst because also he actually does that thing where he doesn't like to flame pick. There's a bit like Maniac in that sense, but it's like he can say the thing that's the flame without being rude. He's actually got that skill. By the way, how people like LEC haven't picked him up. They're just blind for talent. Then again, the same LEC has bozos. Like, this is just my opinion, like fucking Goldborg there and some boring ass players. Like, why would I want to hear Nuke's thoughts about the final of LEC? What's he going to tell me? How to lose better to both the teams? Meanwhile, I tune into the LPL and I'm seeing Troublelink and Nymera just tearing it up. Like, you guys wouldn't know fucking good thing if it slapped you in the face and called you Charlie.
I mean, Nymera, like, not being on LEC anymore is outrageous in my opinion.
Do you know a joke? Are you ready, Monty? You're going to love this joke. Here's what people say when they watch the LPL stream. It's a real comment. Because of their voices, people go like, I'm not joking, they're not trolling. They go, holy shit, Vedius is really good because they sound really similar. And it's like, no, this is better than Vedius because this is like Vedius's voice with better analysis and his jokes and references are on another level. Vedius is just all right. I thought he was always, here's the thing, when you can tell he came from being a really nerdy guy, it's pretty good how he sort of blossomed. Nymera's actually like low-key. This is the year he's cooking. The last years he was gradually building up. This is the year he's cooking. Like, his reference game's mega.
Yeah, he's very funny. So yeah, I don't know, man. Like, LEC, everybody, like we talked about previously, everybody's going to be dialing back their takes on LEC after the quick shot incident. Like, the culture of fear has been definitely inserted there.
Quick shot, I guess, is going to be the new saying backstage before they go live.
Are you going to get quick shot today?
Put that fucking camera away. In general, Goldberg, just don't be around cameras that are submitting anything to the internet. If you could just do that, please, just in a general rule, then me and you were kind of coup de la. And by the way, guys, if you don't know who I am, I'm always just going to say I think people who are overrated, go hard as fuck at them. It's just what I'm doing. Why break the habit of a lifetime? Also, don't like that. You got someone I really enjoyed fucking fired from a broadcast. I'll never see him again. Brilliant. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
I mean, I just wonder how long, the caster meta is even going to be around, Thorin. I really hate this. And like, I don't want to give Riot ideas, but especially when I saw some of the numbers around the LCK Finals, because here's the thing, at least as far as I know, most of the co-streamers for LCK don't even use the English broadcast. They use the Korean broadcast and talk over that one.
Yeah.
And Caedrel does as well.
You don't want it interfering with you and the sound coming through. You can just ignore the Korean one, yeah.
I mean, some of them, they use the English broadcasters obviously for other regions a lot of the time, but not for LCK. And so they have the Korean casters on in the background. So Thorin, it pains me to say this, but like, I just am wondering, like, how long are you going to pay LCK caster salaries when now Caedrel is the biggest broadcast and co-streaming is bigger as a whole? Not even Caedrel's individual stream is now bigger than the LCK main broadcast. He's not even listening to the English casters in the background. So, honestly, Thorin, the question is like, why wouldn't you just cut the casters, give them co-streaming privileges so that they can continue if they want. And if people want to listen to them, which some of the audience obviously does because that's their preferred method, but it's now a minority of that audience. And like, I hate to be grim because I fucking love the craft of casting, and it's the way that I prefer to consume the game.
Atlas is a fucking master of it. He's cooking himself these last few years. He's fucking insane.
But realistically, Thorin, like, Atlas could probably make more money by co-streaming LCK than LCK is paying him.
Here's the silliest thing of all time, Monty. Shall I tell you right now what they should have done years ago, but the main person wouldn't think to do this because he surrounds himself with cretins. And then also, it'd just be such a big gamble. A lot of people aren't going to do it versus a casting salary. Here's what would have been the biggest possible LCK core stream, and it wouldn't be Caedrel. It would be if for the last 2 years, the core stream was LS, but then he had Atlas with him to partner with him, like when they used to cast. That would fucking bang, because Atlas is funny as fuck. He can go with all the jokes, and he's a god caster. And if you don't watch core streams, guys, the worst part of core streams is the downtime where they just go, yeah, it's maybe dragging. No, that's exactly when Atlas would fucking keep it going. He'd hold it together. Then you could let LS come in with his combo. That combo would be fucking sick. I've always thought, I get why Dom does his thing. I actually think Dom does the sack, if people don't know, because it's fucking lonely doing 1 million hours and 1 million regions. You want some mates to talk to, but it's not like it's the craziest broadcast. Like if he himself had some sick caster with him and they played off it, that'd be amazing too. That could be better than a real cast.
Well, it's also that I think if you're these co-streamers can't do what casters do, you would lose your voice. Even if you were just doing the analysis role, if you were doing back to back to back, I mean, some of these guys did LCK finals into LPL lower bracket finals into LEC finals. And so you literally just can't maintain that energy. So it's actually nice for them to have casters on, even if they're Korean casters or different language casters, because it brings like the hype into it, you know what I mean? Because having to talk all the time, I'm just here to tell you, your voice would be shot. You wouldn't be able to do 7 days of this a week. It is very, very difficult to bring the hype and to talk that much and not die. So I think a lot of this is like the co-streamers can't do that. So having, like you say, having other people in on those calls can be very helpful. But anyway, yeah, I do wonder about some of these aspects, and like, I hope I'm wrong, because I would really not like,
it's like you say, you don't want the beauty of, like, here's the thing, Monty. I want both. I always said the whole time, me and Lopez nailed this literally 15 years ago, Monty. We said there should be 2 streams. There should be a main stream with people like the Joe Millers of the world, the Quick Shots of the world, all the best casters that you enjoy here, Captain Flowers. That should be to entertain the nephews. Then there should be an expert stream with 2 expert analysts talking over the game, not just one and not just friends. 2 expert analysts break the game down for people who want to go super in-depth, who want to go on the high-level stuff. If you do that, it's amazing, because I know what you mean. I don't want the actual traditional sports broadcast to not exist. Like, here's the thing. I would prefer to watch the Manning cast, wouldn't I? But I don't want, like, Joe Buck to not exist. I still want professionals to exist, so you can actually, like, hear the fucking quality of, like, the casting and proper professionalism and the top Chris Collinsworth and all those. They're all mega people. They're fantastic at their job.
Yeah, I mean, the Manning cast is now turned into, like, whichever celebrity is releasing a book and, like, wants to be on the show. The
concept's way better, though.
Yeah, the concept is great. The execution is not great. I mean, honestly, Thorin, I think one of the saddest things for me is that Caedrel, who I think was an outstanding caster and like an outstanding analyst, and I really loved his analysis and his color casting. Basically, now he's realized that the most efficient way to grow his brand is by basically becoming English Ibai and just being the crazy hype guy, which is like, he's good at it. And I'm not going to say he's not entertaining, but I do fucking miss like deep analysis Caedrel, because he was excellent
that's the problem,
at
Monty. He's doing the Tarek. He's on that fucking hype train where you just, it's just, because the real problem with this, if you don't understand, guys, is you literally, this is a weird comment to make, but Monty will get it. If you want to be the biggest caster in the world, you don't have an audience. You're going to think, what the fuck doesn't even make sense? No, you don't have an audience. It's not your audience. You're just the one riding the wave right now, and you're the one who got to the top of the tree as the monkey. But here's the problem. Those branches will always be shaken, and one day you won't be on top anymore, no matter how good you are. The reason why I say that is Ninja had the game on lockdown. He was the #1 streamer in the whole world. Every kid, he was on fucking Super Bowl.
He was dueling with Drake.
And then what happened was he thought, well, I have an audience. I'll take them and the bag and go over to this other streaming platform. And what he discovered was he never had that audience. He had a nice audience, but the masses of people who watched him, the Fortnite kids, they were people who just went to Twitch, clicked on Fortnite, first box was him, and they clicked that. And when he wasn't the first box, the joke is, you remember this, they clicked his, and Twitch even put a fucking other thing that streamed other people's shit there. And then they went to Shroud instead, and then they went to the other people. And then eventually the meta continued on as it did. And so in that scenario, if you want to be Caedrel, you have two choices. Do you want to have a niche audience? Now, I can tell you, we're making a killer with a niche audience, but we're never going to be as big as Caedrel is. It is impossible. But if you want to ride the wave of the kinds of cretins that reply to us when we tweet about Spanish and French teams, then yes, absolutely, you are going to have to compromise what you say and what your take is. And you're even going to have to compromise how intelligent what you say is, because that will be off-putting to people. They want you to do literally ape-like reactions to things on screen, as opposed to go, guys, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. He walked into the Sand Soldier there. You've got to understand, like, they were kind of hinting at that point. Look, great play overall. They don't want to hear that, Monty. They just want to hear, oh my God, it's the greatest play of the summer. That's what they want to hear.
What they want to hear is they want to hear that Faker's the GOAT, and they want to see an amazing Faker play. And they don't want to hear that the amazing Faker play was a result of a bad play being made. And it is anti-hype, guys. I hate to tell you, but part of being an analyst...
Yes. I just had a guy I love, Alexi B, win the major, and now I have to go on the campaign because no one else will. It was a fluke. Of course it was a fucking fluke. Look, I know it's going to hurt his feelings when he hears that, but you know what? The truth hurts sometimes, motherfucker. Do you want the truth or do you want a pleasing lie?
And that's the thing about being an analyst, is sometimes you just have to be a Debbie Downer. Sometimes you have to be the guy with the water bucket putting out the bonfire that everybody's dancing around. And like, it's a bummer, but at the same time, when you actually hype something up, then it becomes meaningful, Thorin. Then you can actually celebrate the true greatness. So I don't know, like I do think Caedrel still does do good analysis on his stream. Like, I'm not saying, he's still good. It's just that
it's the sugar to make the medicine go down is what we're talking about, right?
I think it's too sweet at this point for me.
At this point, the problem is the pills and aspirin, and he's making you drink a bag of sugar. That's the problem. Whereas I want it to be more like, like 20% sugar. And then but the problem with that is I also understand I said it earlier. I understand that is the better of the world we're in. Like, if you go for the numbers, it's just what it's going to be. It's what it's going to be, I'm afraid.
And like, I'm not saying like he sold out or anything like that. I think he's doing intelligent things for his career. And I think, Caedrel is canny, and I think he probably has an eye on what his future looks like without League of Legends esports. And I think, he's trying to build up enough momentum in order to carry this into like a move into, variety game. He already does some of that stuff, right? And so he's trying to become
my prediction.
Okay.
You want a prediction?
Sure.
If you follow, because I know this guy, I've done interviews with him, talked to him many times. If you know that in the past, when he was going to become a caster and when he was going to go to core stream, there was times where he had crazy offers, like be the coach like G2 or something mental, right? Here's what I think is an obvious potential offshoot on the path. If people don't know, you can also only do this type of core stream for so many years. Like, it'll actually take years off your life. Like, you wouldn't want to do it 10 years, even if you could. And I don't think you could be on top for 10 years. So the obvious move to me right now is, if what currently are his partnerships hold, here's the cool move. I haven't talked to kids. It's a pure speculation. So get ready. Oh, have you got evidence of this? It's a speculation, dickhead. I think here's what you do. You core stream for a couple more years, you get those mills in the bank, you get the deals all set up, and then you become the general manager of Fnatic. Wouldn't that be exciting?
He's already affiliated with Fnatic, right?
That would be pretty fun, wouldn't it? Because it's right there. You're already working with them. You're going to be involved in them. By the way, you'd be an amazingly popular announcement if someone said that. But I'd even like to see him do the job. I'd actually like to see what would happen if he was picking among ERL talents and who would he trust and who would he bring as a score. That in itself would be like an extension. It'd be a reimagining of the fucking Caedrel show, wouldn't it? Be like The Wire. It's like, let's see what it's like in a different part of the ecosystem. I think that would be a dope. That's a pure speculation on my part. But I think people like him always have that competitive itch, and part of them wants in some capacity to be back in the game. And essentially, if you think about it, guys, it's just a Papa Smithy. He'd just be transitioning and he'd become the GM of a team and you build the squads. Like, it's a great way to not have to be on camera, but to be in the game still, right?
Yeah.
It's pure speculation.
if he wants to, it's a hard move though, because I mean, the amount of money he's making right now is just fabulous, right? So
there's more to life than money.
Especially if you already have the bag. So fair enough. I do think you're right about him being genuinely passionate about the game. I think that's why he stuck with casting as long as he did, in spite of the fact that objectively focusing on his own content would have been the better financial decision. I think he really does care about the competitive aspect, which I respect a lot about him. So he might do something like that. It's just like LS. Like for LS, it was like a bad choice to become a coach when he was trying to coach T1, when he was trying to coach Cloud9. I told him this personally. I was like, Nick, I think this is not a good idea, especially because you work so hard to be in the place you're at as a content creator now. And like what you could make more money being a content creator. And like, if you go coach and it's a failure, it's going to reflect. As somebody who has walked down that road, LS, I can tell you that it hurts your reputation as a content creator. So whatever. It actually ended up okay for him in the end, kind of weirdly, because he didn't coach T1 and his coaching tenure at Cloud9 was so short, and he showed some really interesting and cool things while he was there. I want to talk about some other stuff with you, Thorin. These are some topics that I talked about with Wolf on the Monty and Wolf show, but I'd love your take as well. Like, one of the things that is being discussed heavily right now was obviously, the production value around LCK, just like it was with OGN. They hired many of the OGN producers, was fucking amazing. I can tell you guys, I was in the arena, and it was fantastic to be there live, just in terms of the opening ceremony and the team introductions and all the cool stuff they were doing with the flags. It was great. It was really, really well done. And then on the one hand, Thorin, we get the LCS, but we had two studio finals in the West. One of them was the singer for the League of Legends song Rise, the world's anthem with the Ambition video, just doing a onstage set that was kind of mid. And then on the other side of the world in Europe, we got this final intro that was deeply weird, Thorin, because they had the cherry blossoms in the background in fucking Europe. Like the cherry blossoms things, by the way, in Korea, where I am, for the LCK Finals in spring, it was the week of the cherry blossoms, basically. It was fucking beautiful here in Korea. And so it would have been not too weird to have them do that. But instead, they show like the cherry blossom trees on the LED, and then they have like the rain of cherry blossoms inside the studio in Berlin. And Laura walks out in this like Asian inspired dress, and I'm like, what the fuck is this in fucking Germany?
The theme makes no sense.
I was like, what? So we kind of got that weirdness from LEC. I thought it was kind of a bizarre and nonsensical aesthetic choice. Like, why can't we show springtime in Europe? Just not what I think about. I don't know. And then we get the actual spectacle. And by the way, that stadium that I was in fits 15,000 people. So there were as many people at this LCK Finals or at like the World's Finals in 2022 at the Chase Center in San Francisco. Absolutely mega. Not as big as the Sky Dome here in Korea, which is a baseball stadium. I think I had like 20,000 capacity for Worlds this past year. I didn't go to that, the World Finals. But yeah, I mean, it was sold out. It was incredibly loud. The production value was really cool. And in LCS and LEC. And I mentioned this to Wolf Thorin, but even during the pandemic, so back to the 2021 final we were talking about between C9 and C9 and Team Liquid, that was held at the Greek Theater, which is an iconic music venue in Los Angeles where very big bands play. And because it was the pandemic, they didn't have an audience. But what they did have was very cool camera shots. It's an outdoor venue, so you get to see, shots of LA. They did a really cool like drone flyby teaser video for it with like this hawk that was swooping around that they managed to catch on camera. And they were doing that with no audience. And they were getting this very famous venue, and it felt like a finals. And I know that part of the compromise of LEC going to the new, 3-split more game system was that they may not have budget, to do every single event at a stadium. But it just seems outrageous that they can't even get these, these finals, even in Berlin or Los Angeles, into 1,000-person venue or something like that, where it would just feel more momentous.
I mean, I do think actually this is no joke. I might even do a video on this topic. It's just the problem is I'm not someone whose videos go on Reddit. I'm not someone who's like, essentially, I will never be the person who on the community part discussion, which is just Reddit and Twitter, will be the number one person, even though 99% of views on content don't come from that and are irrelevant to that detail completely. But if you want to be in people's minds, like Riot people look at Reddit, they look at Twitter, they look at these things, right? So the problem I have is this. I think it's a fucking joke. I think they've actually made... Riot Games doesn't understand esports. There's a fucking great headline for you, and here's why. Bro, I said this on Twitter. Do you know how many fucking pros... I'm talking, Monty, people who've won champions, the World Championship of Valorant, people who've been in the biggest finals, been the best teams ever in Valorant, and they tell me privately, this scene fucking sucks because they come from Counter-Strike. You get to play 2.5 LANs a year if you qualify. You get stuff like the meta just changes before the LAN, and you have no information to go off. You get scenarios where a team that you're playing against has never played any team from your region, and there is no replay. You have to slow down a VOD, rewind it, and zoom in on the screen to look if they throw a piece of utility. Like, they tell me it's fucking ass. It's none of the... And then when you go to the finals... It's not, put it this way, Ethan from Evil Geniuses just won champions last year. He said in an interview afterwards, winning ESL New York, not even a top 5 event in Counter-Strike, guys, was more important to him than winning champions. Because in that tournament, he was in the Barclays Center in fucking New York with a massive roaring crowd. He is North American himself, and he was beating Astralis, the greatest team of all time. Winning fucking the World Championship of Valorant didn't touch the sides, mate. So what I want to point out is this. Riot still doesn't get it. It's only ever been Worlds, and for the finals, you've noticed, that ever popped for Riot. That's where they got the giant stadium, the giant thing, the fucking augmented reality dragon. The way they have treated LCS and LEC is a fucking piss take, my dude. Because the whole point of your circuit is you're pretending those domestic championships are meaningful, but you're treating them like they're group stage matches at a fucking MSI. Like, you're having fucking tournaments take place. First of all, playoffs take place in the studio. Bro, I said this a million times. Even the worst times of OGN, you can always hire a fucking warehouse, put out plastic chairs, and you have 5,000 to 10,000 people in a venue. You could do this from the beginning. I imagine they just want to justify that stupid Riot arena that holds fuck all people. And this is why it's even stupider. Because one, I can tell you right now, I've been to Berlin and Cologne. They're full of these fucking industrial areas where you can do this. And then secondly, you spent the whole year bragging about these fan bases from Spain and France, and you're not even utilizing them. That's why it's not a joke. TCL and fucking LFL finals are better than LEC. They are proper stadium events with hype, with a crowd, with a momentous thing that it means something to win. When you win these ones, it's not just because people like Caps have won 1 million of them. You're just in the fucking studio, bro. Who gives a shit? And also, I'll tell you what, I noticed this myself, right? I tell you what, a classic donk you won't have seen on Twitter, Monty. It was fucking top keck. I'm starting to warm up to this Kazi guy because I didn't know half the time he's trolling. He did one of the greatest donks ever seen in esports. Adam Grazin, that fucking imbecile from Overactive Media who's behind Mad Lions, made some sort of comment just like this, like, it doesn't count unless it's in a studio. And remember, Kazi, who was the ADC of all 3 Mad Lions LEC titles, said, well, in that case, no Mad Lions titles count. What a fucking donk that is. But he's right.
That's great.
If you're someone, by the way, I mean, we made this point last year about Abadage. Oh my God, Abadage is in finals. He's won LCS. Yeah, there was never any fucking stadium events. If this whole shit was that he chokes, he was never in a position to choke. We just took that component away from the game. You'll know this, Monty, because you've seen the majors in Counter-Strike. One of the reasons why you can have upsets like in this last major now is because in the major final, you can never be prepared for that moment. Even like a final of a really big event in Counter-Strike is not the same as the World Championship final in front of a giant crowd of people. That moment does things to people, Monty. And even though, by the way, I will say, I think it objectively ruins match quality. The point is that sort of ghost that affects certain players in those finals is why there aren't a million people in Hall of Fames. It's why there's a load of people that are really good and they never won a big championship or a Super Bowl. That's a really, I mean, no, our fucking favourite quarterback's Peyton Manning. And I can tell you what, he's had some fucking just kind of meh Super Bowls. He's had some times where he's the best player in the whole world until that day. And then that fucking ghost was in his ear telling him, this is your career. Oh, you're not going to throw anything. And he blew it a couple of times. So I want that though, mate. That is essential to esports. I actually think it's one of the things that makes winning in esports, like I said about Caps, that's what makes the win so incredible, is that you know you could have been the choker that day. That fucking, it's like UFC. If you're in the UFC, you might win, but it wouldn't be the same if there wasn't the threat there that you get knocked the fuck out on television in front of your whole family. That's fucking stakes, mate. When you're playing that, you're going to be pure single-pointed in the moment in that. That's going to be fucking epic. So they've taken that away. They've made LEC, not only have they made all these splits, but now it's just some stupid rinky-dink little fucking banana cop.
And I think, Thorin, you know, they justify this in Korea because tickets are actually sold for real amounts of money. I heard that the tickets for this finals in LCK sold for between 60,000 and 80,000 won, depending on seating, which is like $50 to $70. And if you have 50 or 15,000 people, it's like $1 million just in ticket revenue plus concessions, which, by the way, venues and, you know, operational costs are cheaper in Korea than they are in the West. So probably they're not losing money on this endeavor, or they're not losing as much at the very least, right? Also, it's justified by the fact that this LCK final, unlike LCS, which continues to go down in viewership unless it increases by 10% because they let a bunch of Brazilian and European people watch it on co-streams like it did this split, this LCK final broke records as the highest Korean viewership of all time. It was like 2.3 million, Thorin, concurrence without China. That's higher than MSI finals. Okay, so it's actually even bigger than international tournaments at this point in time because it was such a banger series and everybody wants to tune in because everybody knows it's fucking Genji versus T1 and Chovy versus Faker. As much as people complain that the last 5 finals have been T1 versus Genji, I promise you if it wasn't T1 versus Genji again, it wouldn't have hit that number, even if it was a great final.
Who are these people complaining? Because I'm getting really sick and tired of all the best things in esports being changed for people who fundamentally don't like the game. They're doing this in Counter-Strike all the time, Monty. We just had a final at IEM Chengdu that was over before it even fucking started, mate. It was boring as fuck. And everyone was going, well, that's good. Only took like an hour and a half or 2 hours. I have all Sunday. Can I just watch a fucking match? Why would I want the match to be as short as possible? You fucking cretin. If you don't like Counter-Strike, get the fuck off the stream. This is why, though, Monty, I can't blame the TO. Because if the only meta is eyeballs, you have to cater to that dickhead. If it's pay-per-view, you can tell that guy on your bike and find a new fucking hobby, dickhead. Go and watch some of the last 40 minutes. We're here to watch Counter-Strike and we paid for a ticket. So that's why we need pay-per-view. That's why we actually need that component, because then they can cater towards the people who actually love the game. If you're bored of seeing T1 versus fucking Gen G, check yourself for a pulse. You don't like League of Legends. You don't like it.
I mean, it's a great series, but I just think it's funny. Like, so as far as the justifying the expense for these things, guys, you know, they can't sell tickets for as much in North America and Europe because they won't sell out the stadium because there's less debate.
No, wait a minute. That doesn't make sense. I was just told there's tens of thousands of Spanish and French fans on call who at any moment will just blow up an arena. So that's a lie. Is that a lie?
I mean, they'll blow up the arena, but not for €70 a ticket.
I mean, the joke here is, this is just a joke, they're more likely to literally blow up the arena than actually have a massive audience there and a really good event. Metaphorically, in a Minecraft game, server, that was a one-man off-Broadway play by a character I wrote called Duncan Thorin. That isn't me.
Jesus Christ.
That's my little rap I do at the end there for the lawyers, you know.
But I mean, like, the finals, you know, you just can't sell tickets outside of maybe the World Finals for that much money. And so I think when we look at these events, it doesn't actually make sense because it's also just more expensive to operate in these countries. So, Korea has the I think, to be fair, lower cost, higher potential profit.
Are you ready? I'm going to blow your fucking mind right now. There's this thing my people tried to get out of. It's called the European Union. Sort of like the USSR, but rebranded, right? And the beauty of the USSR rebranded is you can travel all around it. So you know what? I'm going to blow your fucking mind here. If you wanted to have events, it was cost prohibitive. I probably wouldn't go to Germany. You know where I'd go, Monty? I'd go to Romania. Poland. I'd go to Croatia. I'd go to Poland. I'd go to fucking a million places except this place.
Yeah.
But then again, as usual, Riot works this way. We've just finished this paint job where we're trapped in the corner. Now make a suggestion as to what we should do. Well, nothing you can do when you paint yourself in a corner. Then what I say must be right. That's Riot Games for the last 15 years. It's boring as fuck, mate. You could easily disassemble this concept, rebuild it immediately, and fix this whole problem. Like I said, by the way, you do even know, are you ready? For summer finals, Monty, places like Croatia are fucking beautiful in the summer, mate.
Oh, Croatia's beautiful. I've been there. It's great.
Really cheap. The food is great. They have all the fucking ethnic culture.
Rules, man.
It would even be a dope place to go. And because it's Croatia, you could probably hire like a fucking dope ass like basketball arena and just have the finals there. It's not going to be $10 million, is it?
Yeah. Or you could go to Serbia, obviously. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places you could go, but yeah, you could probably even do some really cool outdoor stuff in Croatia, frankly. And little known fact, but in the Balkans are some of the best camera crews in the world. A lot of these guys were doing the filming for Game of Thrones. I actually worked with one of these camera crews on the Cloud9 Puma advertisement when I was in Croatia, and these guys were fucking pros. Holy moly, the crews there were good. Probably some of, if not the very best technical production crews I've ever worked with. So really, really good. So there's a lot of talent out there in terms of production people. Like you say, it's cheap. There's very interesting potential venues or outdoor locations. Yeah, it was good. So I don't know, man. Like there are a lot of options that they're clearly refusing to look at. And, I think what's so disappointing about this, Thorin, is that this is such a suit decision to make, because if you were to tell, they don't actually understand sports. Like John Needham clearly doesn't understand sports if these are the decisions that he's made, because the thing about sports is you could play the Super Bowl on a field in the middle of South Dakota with nobody around, and you could still say, it's the most important event, but it's the packaging, it's the marketing, it's the wrapping, it's the production value, it's the halftime show. It's all of these things that go into making the Super Bowl an event. And that's what makes the stakes high and makes it exciting, right? If you strip all of that away, you lose the hype, right? And so if you start to lose the hype, then you start to lose fans. And even though it is an immense expense, to potentially have these LAN finals in big arenas, it may lose you money. And it seems like obviously Riot's making layoffs, they're pinching pennies, and this is the line item that they thought had to go. They are not actually thinking about the long-term effects on the game. And like people are going to be driven to LPL and LCK finals as a result of this, which is fine for Riot probably because they own those as well. But this is how the hype starts to die around your leagues. And it is a bad look. I know LCS had a quarter or third full stadium in Raleigh for spring finals last year. But it was also because they put it on Easter and were dumb. But it was, it wasn't well attended. Raleigh was not well attended. So they thought, well, if it's not going to be well attended, why are we doing this? But the answer is,
I'll tell you the reason to do it. Because why else do a fucking sport?
Exactly.
That's the reason we're here is to do these events. Like, that's literally what esports even is. What's mental is they've wound the clock back on esports till it's just a fucking... Is it going to be BYOC at LCS next when costs get put down? Like, let's have it just be a LAN. Let's have the winner get a fucking case of balls and a free Papa John's pizza, you fucking cunts. And then the joke is Travis will do an interview. Oh, now they're even less motivated to play because it's only like a pizza and a thing. Like, mate, I didn't even get into that because I want to save it for next week or something, right? But we need to address that topic that Travis did in this video, because they're now talking, Monty, in the most overpaid region ever, about how like, well, can you justify being a pro? Because the reason to be a
to
pro was never money, you fucking idiots. It was to be the best at a game. You want to be the best. People did this thing for 10K 15 years ago because they were the best in the world. They didn't go, is this worth my time or should I work at Sainsbury's? Like, they wanted to be the best.
Thorin, it doesn't even make sense because Travis Gafford's best buddy Doublelift didn't become a pro player for money. Like, none of the early LCS pros, before LCS existed, guys, people were getting paid shit. You were lucky to have like a TSM fucking house in Long Island to live in and maybe your food get paid, but you were paying the bills by streaming, guys. And when LCS started in 2013, many players were just on the $25,000 annual stipend that Riot got, and and the teams would pay for your housing and your food and maybe a small amount of additional money. Yes. But basically the stipend flowed through the team, and that is what was paid to you, and the rest of it was just on your streaming. That's why we had all these pro players who were streaming all the time. That's why the hype of the LCS was big. So if there is some sort of, the LCS was based off of players who were amateurs who didn't have $60,000 a year. So the concept that you need $60,000 a year in an academy system, which didn't exist when LCS was literally at its peak, in order to have popular players or to have players who want to go pro, is just so fucking absurd on its face. I can't handle it, Thorin. I can't handle it. Like, and
because that concept, like, your place is not, that is why your region are fucking losers. It's not, by the way, that I'm saying if you were all winners that you'd actually win worlds, but at least you could, by the way, you could have a playoff team every season if you had actually motivated players. And then two, that cultural fucking decline of, listen, I'm getting the bag, what's it even worth it for? That is why your culture will not produce a Mozart. You will not have like a Colossus of Rhodes. You will not be remembered in history, the end of the American Empire. People will maybe remember the 20th century and the big high points and the pushback against global communism. They won't remember this part here. This will be like the end of the Roman Empire when it went to shit. And no one even remembers that by the time the barbarians came, it was over. It wasn't even them that pushed them back. At that point, they were basically just walking into a bunch of rubble and just fucking taking what they wanted.
Yeah, and look, just straight up, if you guys are going to celebrate the European amateur circuit, they never had the fucking California state full-time employee minimum salary of $60,000 or $65,000 a year or whatever it is. Like, a lot of these ERL players still are getting paid shit. It's not about the amount of payment that you're making. It's about the possibility of going pro and having, and I know this was addressed as well, guys. Like, so, it is true that part of the problem was importing washed players who wanted to steal paychecks as opposed to doing that. But also I saw some weird comments around this, Thorin, where people have weirdly lionized the promotion relegation in NA as something that was like a good system. Guys, you have to remember the reason why this went away is because people like Jack were literally just getting a bunch of import players or like washed former pros, running them in the LCS, selling the slot for $1 million, and then rinse repeating that process. It wasn't producing good native players to America, right? I can tell you this because I got a team into the LCS. Who was on my fucking team? Alex Ich. Right? It was, you had to get a veteran player who wanted to get back in, but was maybe not at their peak anymore, but was still better than a bunch of rookies and could just basically run them into the league.
Carry you into the league, yeah.
Yes. So, and yeah, you had to have some non-import players, but you tried to cover those with veterans and then maybe import a player or two. And this was the system. So it's not like the promotion relegation system was like creating new players. It fucking wasn't, guys. It was just a recycling factory for old pros in the same way that the academy system was. You just weren't there or forgot about it. It was deeply cynical. I mean, Cloud9's entire like fucking slot farming was one of the most cynical things I've ever seen. Do I blame Jack? No, it was a great way to make 7 figures once a year. Yes. It was great. So, but I do think that obviously the ERL structure and what they built in Europe was much better. And there was never anything implemented like that within America. They could have absolutely implemented a regional based system in America that probably would have been very popular. It's not like there aren't regional rivalries.
The most obvious thing ever, if you actually wanted to make a path to pro in America, because remember, the problem in America is no one ever respected solo queue. So they wouldn't, even if you were like rank 4, give you a spot on a team automatically, right? You had to get through the gateway of, does the coach think you're any good? The most obvious thing they should have done like 7 years ago is make 3 hubs, and it would have been like this. LA, New York, Chicago, and these would be regional leagues, and then the winners of these leagues would go to like an EU Masters style. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of that way. If you lived in one of these hubs, you only have to go this far. You don't have to go. I have to get to the top of solo queue while doing all the rest of my life. Then I have to hope I get like an invitation to approve it. Like the Math to Pro was always asked. Like you should have built it up. And also, if you'd have done a good job, by the way, you might have had regional fan bases. It might not be huge like some of these other ones we're talking about, but you might have been able to get 1,000 people in Chicago into a stadium.
Yeah, and not only that, Thorin, but because these matches could theoretically be played online as well, you could have, I think Harris Peskin has had some very good points, guest on the Four Horsemen, guest on this show as well, actually previously, which is like, why not have teams be local to cities, play online, which you could absolutely do at a regional level, play from a LAN cafe where their fans can come, even if it's like 50 people, 100 people, where you have their matches be in a different city. So like if they're in the Chicago League, you have a Minneapolis team or whatever. And yeah, there's going to be some ping, but you set up tournament realms like relatively close. Like they have a tournament realm in LA already. You put one in New York, you put one in Chicago, and then you can actually have teams like try and activate locally, so you have the grassroots stuff, and maybe that really turns into something. Like maybe it does turn into an LFL final. Like I don't know how big it could get, because you know what? Riot never fucking tried.
And no one knew the LFL would get that big. They really built it up year after year after year with their own localized casters and talent. There's another thing, by the way. If you do this the right way, I'll tell you immediately what you'd also get that people are too naive to think about. Now, if you're not on the LCS broadcast, you can be on that regional broadcast. Guys, that's the people who do like the French broadcast have done all the French broadcasts forever. Like they're just fans, they're fan favorites within their region. They're never going to be on LEC, but they have their own career, their own job, and they're connected, and they built their own audience too. So you could have done all this, but again, Riot paints himself in the corner, then bitches that they can't get up the corner. You did that, not us idiots.
And also, Thorin, let's just pretend for a moment that there was a Denver-based team. Right. And when I was casting League of Legends, if they asked me to like cast a couple of the Colorado team where I'm from, I would just do it for free. You know what I mean? To try and help them. I think a lot of the casters, like you're telling me Azael wouldn't cast like a fucking Canadian team for free if he had the opportunity?
Bro, the mad one is this. If it wasn't for the fact it's just too far gone, the blood feud with Riot and the heinous shit they've done to friends of mine, in a sane world where they were just a company like ESL, and the only reason I don't work with ESL is because of that EPL shit and the Saudi shit, nothing to do with their production skills. Monty, I lived in the Netherlands for years. You know how many times they've come here with like the finals? In a sane world, I would just be a guest on that. You know what I mean? Like, it could easily be done. I'd even do it for free if you were a cool company. But in this world, obviously, fuck Riot. But it just shows again how like esports never makes the most of what it has, mate. It never does.
Yeah. So I think my point is like, I think there's a way to use the personalities that you have, whether it's the pro players or the casters, who would be willing to do the extra work for very little, if no money. Like, Captain Flowers, he's from Ohio. You think he's not going to cast an Ohio team? Like, he totally would. He totally would. So I think there were ways to actually shed light on this and kind of get more grassroots momentum, but it never happened. Right. And so now it's not so much about, I don't think it's so much about the collapse of the academy system as the problem is that there was never a sensical system in the first place. Like you can bemoan the loss of academy, but it was absurd for Riot to force all of the teams to have their teams in California and then have to pay California prices for housing and wages and everything like that. Like that was a dumb system. Why did that have to exist? That should have been optional.
And then talk, just to make the point a third time, like it's the only option and it's binary. We either do it this way or not at all. Why is that the option? Why is it not possible, like your company, Riot Games, to scale down? Why can't that happen in your leagues? Why is that not possible? I mean, it's actually one of the areas I actually look down on the LCS owners. In the same way as I look down on pro players for wasting their time with those unions and never asking for the really important things, I also look down on the LCS owners for when they had all those meetings, never bringing up stuff like, we demand as your partners to not have the same fucking running costs. We could have an identical product with half the running costs.
Yep.
Bro, I think I can see a way out of this.
and also, Thorin, let me just put this out there for a second. If the take is that it is more likely to be successful by going to university or getting a job than it is to be a professional player, all I have to do is like say, welcome to professional sports. Guys, it is always more sane to go to college and to become a lawyer than it is to try and get into the NBA. That's how it fucking works, guys. That's just how it fucking works. You have to literally want to do nothing else with your life and then be in the 0.0000001%. That's why we like sports. That's why we like it.
Oh, it's entitled as fucking... I saw that comment as well. It's so fucking stupid because they were like, you get a better chance of being a state senator or a Marine. One, I don't want to be those things. Two, you make it sound like I am fucking starting in Pokemon and rolling a fucking character in D&D. Like, oh, state senator, I got that instead of pro player. And then three, I'm just going to say this right now. Actually, it's harder to become a state senator, the things you have to fucking do. And it's way harder to become a Marine than it is to be a fucking LCS pro, you clowns. You actual clowns. Like, that way of thinking makes no sense at all. It's so But, I'll give you the same thinking, Monty. By the same logic, the chances of winning Worlds as a current LCS pro are probably... smaller than doing something mad like, I don't know, getting the next shit coin that goes to $1 million. So logically, no one should try and win Worlds this year. Just buy shit coins. Oh, wait, does that not make any sense for actively living your life? My bad. I thought I was using probability to fuck with people's minds. Check out my side channel later today and you'll see why that's bad.
I also just think like you don't understand the mentality. If you are second guessing yourself and being like, I should go to university instead of trying to be an LCS pro, you probably shouldn't be an LCS pro. It's not a logical decision.
When people used to ask Christopher Hitchens the famous question every writer gets, why do you want to be a writer? He would always stop them and go, that's not it. It's something I had to do. Mm-hmm. It's something that I'm compelled to do. And so essentially then it's like what I've done. It's just about creating a career around you where you can monetize it, hopefully. And then by the way, if people don't know, this is something that's existed in the entire history of art. Like literally that's what patronage was. It doesn't matter that you're Michelangelo. You can't afford to do all the projects you want to do. So you have to put a bunch of your shit into what the Vatican wants on their ceiling. And then if you're in India, by the way, do you think it's really a great career choice to go and become a mystic in the forest? No, you're going to have no money because you spend all day transcending reality and meditation. So what you rely upon is that people had such a strong religious and cultural sense that when you would come into the village, they would give you some food and some shelter for the night and go, it's a holy man. Like this is literally the system that's always operated. No one sat down and went, yeah, now listen, like Bindu or whatever, the odds of you making it and surviving as a holy man, you're better off just becoming the guy carrying the water. It's like, that's not what I'm fucking here for, is it? Like, there's more important things than that, isn't there? Come on. I couldn't think of an Indian name, so I made one up. It's all good.
No, it's a good analogy, though. It's a good analogy. It's not as simple. And it's like, if you have these thoughts, you probably shouldn't be doing these things. And they're not logical things to do. Nobody is like, I definitely want to become the next Messi, and everybody's like, you're right, that sounds like a probable course of action. To your life will definitely end that way, right? It's like you have to be crazy and it has to be a dream, and living the dream is the reward. It's not like, oh, I'm entitled to be a pro player with X amount of salary. And also, Thorin, I mean, sure, we're old and we're jaded, but it's also like hilarious just in the content. Like you reveal yourself as an esports noob when you say shit like this, because we saw so many pro players who were dirt broke and who were just kept on grinding and did incredible things. And this was before there was any money to pay them and they got paid shit. Or like even, and you guys are thinking like, oh, well, what about the Korean scene? Guys, even in Brood War, those guys got paid shit unless they actually won things. Okay. Like I have, through my wife, she knows some
detail. I'll give you a bit of esports history. So everyone reveres Boxer and Nada, right? They're obviously Boxer, especially, even though, by the way, Nada was better and a much greater player. But they revere these two players as like the greatest. At one point, especially Boxer, he's like the king of Korean esports until Faker came, basically. If people don't understand, the reason him and Nada got so good at the beginning is there weren't teams. There was no SK Telecom. They just got into a house together. These people, like them and Yellow, they're all in the same house, if you don't know, guys. And they just grinded like motherfuckers, essentially living like students on fucking mattresses on the floor, playing all day long, trying to overcome people like Grr and Elke and all these people. That's all they did at the beginning. And it was years before they got to the giant 400k salary and a world famous and on a billboard. That was afterwards. The success comes after the grind. You don't get it before. This is why your whole country and mine have been tricked by the college fees, because they think, right, so by signing up to this massive debt, I'm guaranteed when I leave, I get a 100k job. And you morons go, yeah, why not? And then they go, brilliant, sign up. That was never the way life ever worked, by the way. That was never the way it ever worked. In fact, a mad detail for you, this is also why I agree with the pro thing, is college isn't for everyone. Like, that's a stupid egalitarian notion that everyone should have a degree. The whole premise of why a degree used to be worth something is not many people had them. If everyone has them, it dilutes it. Like, I'll give you the other thing I used to always say I thought was a banger retort. You know, when everyone would go, why aren't there more women in pro gaming? I would always say, you are aware, I wouldn't advise anyone get into pro gaming. It's an obsession that will essentially destroy your life if you want to be the best. The point is, you want to be someone like the Kobe Bryants of the world who have to do it. So if there's a woman who's like that and she has to do it, welcome in. If you're just here like, yeah, but I want it all like comfy and then I want the same, then you don't get that. That's not the way life works. And by the way, it wasn't like that in esports either. It wasn't like that. As Monty's saying, the greatest players of all time, all those Hall of Famers grinded for like 10k a year at one point in their career. And they kept playing. And the best ones, by the way, are the Swedish ones. Because you know my favourite stupid narrative of all time, Monty? It goes like this. The only reason Sweden was the best in Counter-Strike is because they had really good internet, right? First of all, that wouldn't make any sense for CSGO early on because CSGO, everyone had good internet. But the reason it never made any sense is because Sweden was one of the only countries, Monty, where you couldn't live off your pro gaming salary. Get right used to make 1,400 euros a month. An apartment in Stockholm is probably 2,500. Do the math.
Plus the tax,
he was actually
right?
wasting his fucking time and the tax rate is fucking insane. There's a reason why that good old Flusher got Al Caponed. They couldn't get him for, I think, cheating. They got him on his taxes. Look it up. It's actually a real story. They got him for not paying some of his taxes in the end because, yeah, guess what? If I was making 200k and then the government was like, I'll be taking half of that, I might find a way to go, tax guy, do your work. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Maybe you would.
You know, also, like I was about to say, my wife has talked to former StarCraft 1 and 2 players who have gotten back into the scene, like in newer games, right? And basically, like, their reaction to becoming management is like, wait, the players get paid instead of having to win their money? What the fuck? You know, it just wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing.
Yeah, it makes sense. Actually does, low key.
It's like, wait, you guys get paid now? What? And that's in Korea, which has had, you know, the highest like professional, like the highest level professional scene for the longest time. So yeah, pretty funny. But yeah, I think it's like the problem is not it's the problem. The problem is really a lack of a grassroots competitive system, as well as, you know, I think the biggest problem with NA is just people not playing League of Legends. I think young people just don't fucking play the game.
Yes.
And
the ship sailed on that one, man.
Yeah, if young people played the game, then I think we probably have a pretty healthy pro pipeline. Just because there would be some number of people who are so completely obsessed with it that they would train their asses off and do anything it took to get to the top. Which is what happened in the early days of League of Legends. Like, Doublelift was fucking homeless. Like, what? He managed to figure it the fuck out, right? Like, look at Doublelift. Like, we were laughing at him earlier on the show, but objectively, like, he got thrown out of his house by his parents. He was a clueless teenager, and he was so obsessed with the game that he figured out a fucking way to keep playing this game, even though he was getting paid fucking nothing at the time, guys. So, people will figure it out if they want to. And if Doublelift could do it, certainly some of the players in the amateur circuit could do it today. So anyway, what I want to talk about a little bit about Korea, and because I tweeted this, Thorin, and I talked to Wolf about it a little bit, but what's your take on the, is Chovy like approaching bonjwa status at this point in time? Because I think this is a great conversation to have with you because of the, you know, your historian aspect.
The problem with that term is essentially it has always been a completely cursed discussion, and here's why. When the concept was invented by Korean fans in StarCraft Brood War in the 2000s, here's a detail no one knows. Are you ready? Because I've actually investigated the history. Even though they count Boxer, who, by the way, is almost an honorary one. He doesn't even meet the criteria. They count Boxer, I Love Oof, Nada before I Love It, Nada, I Love Uv, Savior, and then the discussion later was, does Flash get to be it until he won everything, right? Here's what people don't know. The term was made for Savior, and they retroactively put the other 3 in. So the problem became immediately that the rules of why Savior was the bonjwa and then why the others got to go in. I once wrote an article on SK Gaming, sadly it's probably down now, but I'll put it on my website. I'll tell you what, I'll make sure after this, I'll put it up because it was a banger article. And basically I explained that all fans ever did was whoever the new potential bonjwa is, Jaedong, Flash eventually, all they would do is just look at one of the other players and go, well, he hadn't done what he's done, even if he'd done what the others had done. And yet collectively, none of them had done what everyone had done. Each person, so I'll give you a famous one. I just said it was made for Savior, right, Monty? Well, remember, there was 2 leagues in Korea. There was the OSL and the MSL. Now, what was cool was the OSL was the most prestigious one, but because it had silly things like the BO1s at one point in time and a random like draw just from top, but MSL reseeded it at best of 5 the whole way through the playoffs. Actually, MSL was the consistent one. MSL could have the same player in the finals 3-4 years, many times. OSL was always like you were in one and then 2 seasons later you run. Here's a detail a lot of people don't know. When Savior got given that title was when he won the MSL and the OSL around the same time, or maybe he won like one before, right? People don't know this. In his streak of making like 4 or 5 MSL finals, he just wasn't even qualifying to the OSL. He wasn't even getting into the league. He was losing in those open qualifiers that like all the team house members go, the practice. He was losing in those, see, as he was the champion of the other league, the less prestigious league, but he was called the bonjwa. So then Flash came along and was in all 6 finals, but he lost 2 of them. So people go, how could he be the bonjwa? Bonjwa means to stand above all, and he has lost and has a rival. And so the stupid thing is people did that. So basically, the reason I'm bringing this back is this. People are going to do the same thing in League. So in League, everyone told me, Monty, a lot of people won't know this, until Faker had 3 worlds, everyone said, he can't be the bonjwa. He's only won 2 worlds. Because what they decided was, worlds is the best competition, right, and he's only won 2 of them. And a bonjwa would have like, 3 or 4 titles. And they did this weird thing. So to me, I think bonjwa is this. If you're going to be honest, in a team game, Monty, you can only control your individual player. You aren't the GM. So oftentimes you're not even the shot caller if you're the star player, by the way. You can only do what you can do in your situation. Like, I'll give you an example right now. Is there anyone who actually thinks Viper isn't the best ADC in the world? He is. It's just the problem is it's impossible from the scenarios he's in to win. He can't win a title. Like, in the future it's possible, but in these ones, if you watched these games, there was no clicks of the mouse he could have done that would have won those series and got him the title for the LCK. So did he somehow fail? No, he's the best ADC right now. So my point is this. It's why I say it. I've changed it to make people not as mad. Instead of saying Rookie's the greatest player, I just say he's the best player. Because greatest is potentially different from best. So sure. I think Rookie had the best body of work of a player. Now, Faker, certainly up there. So if I had to pick 2, I'd say Rookie and Faker were the bonjwas of League, right? If you want to put a third one, I think Chovy already deserves it at this point in time. Think about how many years individually he was very, very good. And now, if you want winning as well, he wins as well. What more do you want? Does he have to win Worlds? I don't get why you have to win Worlds, mate. What's weird is this, Monty. Have you ever noticed how, if I say who's the best ADC of all time, tell me really quickly the first name they say.
What, Uzi?
Never won a fucking Worlds in his life, homie.
Sure. Yeah.
So why don't they say Deft? Why don't they say Ruler? You
Some
know
people
why
might
they
say
don't.
Ruler at this point.
They would now, but they never would after he won Worlds. You get the point? They do.
Yeah.
All they're doing is this. I learned this ages ago, Monty. It's why my discussions on like great players are fire. There is no such thing as a debate. You like the player you like, and then most people, after they like the player, look at the reasons that fit him and just say that is what counts, because it's a way to retroactively make your player the better player. So instead of doing that, why don't we just talk about either how great our players are, or if you want to do what you're talking about, before we decide, we have to set the ground rules. Do you have to win Worlds? Do you have to win international competitions? Do you need a number of domestic titles? Do you need to be MVP? Set the rules, then we'll see who meets the criteria. Because here's what I don't get about this whole analogy in this situation. Like, are we actually acting like if Faker had only won the first Worlds, and then he played identically in every other match of his career, but like Wolf inted season 5 Worlds, and then you know what? Fucking, you won't believe it, Duke fucked up season 6 Worlds for him, and then at season 7,
he wasn't even at 2014 Worlds. He wasn't even there.
Well, if he played identically, would he be any less like the best player of all time? Surely he'd be the same, but he just wouldn't have the titles, right? So to me, that's why titles is the question, because the only thing you can say now about Chovy is where's the MSI in Worlds, right? So that's my question is, does that make you the bonjwa? Do you have to win those tournaments? Because what I don't get is this, Monty. It comes from a 1v1 game. If Flash really was the best, he can win the tournament each time. It's only him playing. Chovy cannot win the game if Peanut does nothing in game 5. Chovy cannot win the game if his teammate is Morgan. Chovy cannot win the game if he plays Damwon in the first round on like the second or third best Korean roster and they win Worlds. By definition, it is not his fault always in these scenarios. So, like I say, if we're talking body of work, I think absolutely Chovy is either the next one or he's this far from it. He's a can't tear from it.
Yeah, it really feels very close to me.
What do you
and
think?
The arguments that I think I personally take it not yet, not because he hasn't won an international title. It's mostly because of his level of dominance over a prolonged period. Remember, guys, that he's been in 5 of the 5 last LCK Finals, and he's won 4 of them, and he's won 4 straight now. And not only that, but he's had to do it with different iterations of the team. Like, you know, you could have been like, well, he had Ruler in the first year, right, that he was doing this. Well, then he didn't have Ruler, right? And he's changed basically yes, Lehens came back, but you know what I mean, guys. He's changed every single teammate on his team. Throughout that period of time, very few of his teammates were as hyped up as Faker's teammates. Like, remember, Faker's been playing with Keria, Zayas, these guys who have been massively, massively hyped up as individual skill gods.
All the years when Faker wasn't winning Worlds, they used to just ram all-star teams around him. It was like fucking Khan into fucking Teddy joined from the. You had Clade. These people were all like champion level players. If you don't, they were just ramming star players around him for years, and he wasn't winning either.
Yep. And also, you know, Chovy was playing on bad Hanwha rosters before that. Even on Griffin, when he was a rookie, he was, you know, that player ended up being, you know, all those players ended up doing great things, but they were still all rookies, and he did very well in spite of that, right?
I've got a question for you. Are you ready for a question that's going to hurt some people's feelings? Right? You know how, Monty, when Device in Counter-Strike had years and years where he was a top 3 player in the world, but he didn't win the major. Everyone said he's a choker because he would underperform in the big finals, in the big semi-finals, right? But then when Astralis started winning, especially in 2018, he then just became like the ultimate clutch player because he was always winning the finals. They would never even go into 3 maps. He changed his whole career narrative around.
Yep.
Why does that only go in one direction? Are you ready? Are you ready, guys? When this dawns on you, it's going to fucking fry your noodles, boys.
With Faker.
So, Faker, post-season 7, is only clutch in the LCK. Internationally, this guy isn't very clutch at all. By the way, you're going to go at Thorin 2023 Worlds. How could you choke in the final against Weibo Gaming, by the way? That wasn't even a chance to choke. You weren't even given the opportunity to choke. So in Worlds Finals, before that, like, first of all, by the way, here's the one they don't like to talk about either. You know how we carried that Season 7 team to the finals? Yeah, he also shit the bed in the final, by the way. He wasn't very good at all. And then you go to the 2022 finals. He's one of the reasons Keria didn't win that Worlds. Keria was fucking dope.
And you guys will remember, Faker played extremely well in the semis of 2022 Worlds. His Rise game was fucking fantastic. He pooped himself versus Zeka in that final. Like, he got outplayed pretty hard by Zeka.
Why does he never get to be a choker? He's done it for 4 or 5 years now, Monty. And as I just pointed out, I don't even count this last Worlds on choking. That's like, you played with the harder opponents earlier in the tournament, but I'm sorry, finals are different. So in that scenario, you didn't even have the chance to choke. Weibo game was ass.
Yeah, I also think, like, you know, people don't want to hear this about Faker either, but, you know, T1 as a team is 10-6 now in finals, but they're 1-4 with this roster. So before Faker was on this roster, guys, Faker was 9-2 in finals, and now he's 10-6. Like, it hasn't been, he's made the finals, and part of it, I think, obviously was his injury last year, but there have been finals that T1 was favored for. This was not one of them. Last summer was not one of them. Last spring was one of them. And they lost that one. And like, I think if you look at the actual arc of Faker's career, it's true. He's no longer the superstar individual player of his team. He has transformed himself into a very good shot caller. And we got to see that in this latest series. Part of what makes T1 fun is their Baron calls and their cross maps and their ability to play from behind is fucking great. Like Faker's knowledge of the game and the timing windows that Faker sees and the shot calls he makes are wonderful, guys. And he has had a very good year so far. And he had a very good spring last year too. Very good individual seasons. He was the second best top laner in the LCK this split. He didn't get MVP because Chovy deserved that, obviously. But Chovy's on another level now. And I think, Thorin, one of the compelling things about Chovy's career is that he went from, the lane guy to Peanut's tool, but now he and Lehens are the shot callers of this team, and their macro is different, but it's still really good. You look at the first part of the game one that they played, and the macro of Gen G is spectacular in that game. And this is Lehens and Chovy now combining into shot calling. They don't have Peanut to be the big voice of the team anymore. So he has really evolved as a player, and he is still as dominant in lane. Like, I mean, Chovy had no business winning a lot of those lanes that he was playing in that final against Faker, as we discussed earlier. Like, you should not be winning into Hail of Blades Azir in some of these matchups, and Chovy's like going even, and he's shot calling, and he's making the hero outplays. So as just in terms of dimension, and people will also say, well, Chovy chokes internationally. He was actually pretty good at Worlds last year. It wasn't his fucking fault they lost.
Doesn't matter. They don't watch the games, mate. What they do is they see that his team lost, so he must have choked.
Yeah.
Even though, remember, I'll just point out, who else is on his team? Darren, Peanut. Bro, is he also supposed to make them not choke as well? Is that Chovy's fault? Am I missing something? Because I just pointed this out a second ago. Faker absolutely is the reason Keria doesn't have 2 worlds right now. I always thought that's when I knew I couldn't call myself a Faker fan anymore. When I knew that to be a Faker fan was to say, look at Keria crying. He's crying because his team just fucking entered the World Championship against a dog shit team.
I mean, Zeus helped a lot.
All of them did, mate. It's why I even told you. And by the way, how about this narrative, Monty? Do you remember how everyone was like, we can't know if the Gen G super team will be any good? Remember what I said T1 should have done in the offseason? I said I wouldn't re-sign this whole squad because you only got away with it once internationally. Instead, what I would have done is used the power of the T1 brand and all that money, and I would have signed Viper and Canyon. And now I'd be sitting on the fucking dynasty. Because let me know what team Gen G would have made without those players. That would be Faker would be winning LCK right now. He'd be going for the fucking Grand Slam right now, boys. But instead, you're stuck with Owner. By the way, joke is, actually, Goomer ended up being one of the better players. But you're stuck with fucking Owner. Zeus betrayed you completely. Apparently, he only glowed up for fucking Worlds. That's it. And Owner's just all right. He's all right. He has some good games.
Yeah. And Owner, I think, is very meta-dependent, and it's very dependent on if he can play through a winning bot lane. So he's been exposed. Like, when he's on, he looks fucking amazing. But, when he actually has to think about game states, he's nowhere near as good as some of these other junglers. Like, he's not Canyon, he's not Peanut when it comes to pathing or decision making. He can push advantages. He's extremely mechanically, skilled. One of the great things about Owner is he coordinates engages with Faker brilliantly. As far as like jungle mid engage synergy goes, they're up there among the best in the world. So there are things to like about Owner, but he's not the brain behind the team, and he's not the most cerebral jungler that we have in Korea. So I think this is tough because like this T1 is good, but they're just not clutch enough. Like, they just lack the killer instinct in the finals.
Here's what I love, Monty. Here's what I love about T1 fans. You know what? You got to give it to them, Monty. They are incorrigible. And here's why. Because their instant pivot was, who cares? We're going to win MSI. What in the world about these LCK playoffs thinks you think you're winning MSI? Did you see the first Hanwha Life series? Did you see how badly Zika hinted the other? By the way, we didn't even talk about that one. Bro, Viper was in hell in that lower bracket series. Zika refuses to win, but demands that he has to play a Azir that he knows nothing about. This guy is a fucking bomb. He's a fucking bomb, dude. I've never seen a great player be as bad as this He had one tournament ever. Ever. That's it. He's a bomb. You can talk all the shit you want about BDD, who's never won Worlds. I would take him in I would snap call that instantly. Instantly, I would take BDD over this motherfucker.
Yeah.
Is it even a conversation?
No, I mean, not for me.
I'll still take Showmaker any season than this fucking guy. He's a fucking bomb.
The problem with Zika is he's like good enough to be on a top team, but he's not good enough to like get you a title. and people get mad, Thorin, because we have to have these conversations. But it's like, you know, look at over at the LPL and JDG this split. You know, they downgraded. I mean, 369 is really just showing up in the LPL right now. Obviously, he's fucking amazing. But, you know, you look at their solo lanes and the downgrades that they had off of 369 and Knight, and you're like, yes, JDG is a very good team, but like to win LPL or LCK, it takes more than a very good. You know,
here's why Ruler
you have to have
crying.
like excellence in 5 positions, otherwise you can't.
Here's
even
why
get
Ruler
there.
was crying, Monty, because he just went from 369 and Knight to fucking Flandre and Yagao. That's an ouchie. That's one of those ones like, mate, you'd have to be twice as good yourself. What do you want from me? Because you notice, by the way, Monty, ADC, this is where people like Dom don't get it. You've got to ask your question, are you complaining about solo queue or competitive? Because in competitive, by definition, ADC is the most impossible position to hard carry 1v9 out of if your teammates aren't good enough. That's why it's all the ADCs are in prison, mate. Viper's in prison, Ruler's in prison. I would joke around and say upsets in prison, but I know you all can't handle that conversation yet. The point is, that's the fucking nightmare position, isn't it? You can't carry out that one, mate. Good luck getting out of that position.
I mean, look at how Genji beat Hanwha. They just basically hard targeted Viper and just like dove him relentlessly in the back line for the entire series, making sure his summoners were down. And it is up to his teammates to peel for him. And frankly, if they're going to use that many resources to kill Viper, somebody else on this fucking team has to step up and be the guy.
That's where if you're Zeke, you're cleaning up an easy fight, not even doing all the damage, for fuck's sake. Because I've always said this. It's why the second that Knight left JDG, I knew everyone else was like, hey, but Yagao's been in JDG before and he's going to play for Kanavi. No, you weren't watching those team fights. The same team fights I used to watch where every single caster was like, oh my God, Ruler's impossibly good. It's like, bro, he existed in a permanent shield of like, if you go within this range, Knight does a full Syndra combo onto you. That doesn't exist right now for him. He's now playing the Viper game where it's like you basically go in and it's an assault course. It's like parkour. You go in, you jump over the first thing, you duck below the blade, you have to fucking move around a thing, you have to run. It's like, you know those Mario Nightmare Fuel modes where they have like all the fucking... He has to play that now. Before he was playing Super Mario 1, it was like, hit the block. Oh, got a mushroom.
It's also 369, who was primarily playing tanks last year, is one of the best zoning tanks in the world to create space for an AD carry. And, you know, you couple with this with Ruler's own skills, and I think Ruler is probably the most efficient ADC in the world when it comes to summoner spell usage. Yes. And that's why the Xayah was banned all the time last year, guys. Because when he has Xayah ult, you literally can't make him flash. It's fucking crazy. You can't get him. You will never kill him. So, you know, the combo of these things, now it's a lot easier to kill him. He doesn't have the same level of protection. You know, Sheer looked very good in his debut, but he's still a rookie. And clearly, like, JDG is taking his development very slowly. Also, I was asking Dom about this, and Dom said, like, he thinks that the champion pool, like, meta shifted towards Flandre and away from Sheer. So that was a reason why we didn't see him in playoffs. But frankly, like, Flandre is a world champion. And, like, who do you want in playoffs? Random rookie or fucking tested veteran? Right. So we'll see what happens over the rest of this year. Like, this could be one of those times where JDG develops into, you know, later on.
Probably gamble on him. Yeah, gamble on Shane. Yeah. He's going to be good. Like, two things. One, he is basically playing the Chinese esports version of the movie Big. That's straight fire. And then two, old school reference for those who know. That's funny. And then the other thing is the second one. You know what I just said about Ruler when he looked like it was at his absolute peak now? Are you ready, guys? Now that Knight's on BLG, everyone tells me Elk's the best ADC in the world. There's almost it's a pattern. What's the connecting fact? Oh, well, we'll never know, I guess. We'll never know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously BLG is the new super team. By adding Knight to that roster, it's pretty fucking insane upgrade.
That's why BLG I'm telling you, T1 fans. This is why T1 fans tell them themselves. You think the next narrative is, will we win MSI? The next narrative, you dumb motherfucker, is what happens when Gen G and BLG play. In fact, that's the biggest narrative right now in the world of League of Legends. I don't even care if it's in the final. Just give me that series once. I just want that series, mate, because that could be like the highest mechanical fucking series ever played in League of Legends. That could be bonkers, mate. You remember that MSI series where JDG played BLG and everyone in the team fight just did like the proper counter, like some sort of fucking like anime or something, like in those team fights. Like, it was insane. Like, I want that. That's what I want to see in League of Legends. Oh, it's boring though. It's like Genji again. Oh, it's boring.
And
you know, bored by?
I like look. I think back to the Chovy conversation. Like Chovy is in my mind very close to that status. A lot of people say, but like we were talking about, but what about the international competition? I don't really care about Worlds, honestly. I think MSI's format is better now, frankly. Like,
so you'll crown him if he wins MSI and he doesn't get carried. You'll crown him.
I mean, I think if we're talking about is he the best player in the world, like I don't even know if he has to win MSI. What happens if he plays BLG and Styles on Night would be my question, because we can only judge him in, it's obviously a team game, so there's always going to be the team factors. But for me, bonjwa is about individual excellence and like separating yourself so clearly from the rest of the field. And what does this guy have to do besides win 4 consecutive titles with, let me think here, entirely different teammates? And for those of you guys say LeHens, they're different versions of the roster, right? Yes, LeHens was there for the original like summer title, in 2022, but then he left, and then he had new teammates, and now he has new teammates again, and LeHens is one of those new teammates again, and obviously they're on Griffin together as well. So there were.
Go on.
No, I mean, I'm saying, like, what does this guy have to do? He is the consistent player of this roster. He is still as good in laning as he was. His macro play and his shot calling are now up to that level. If he just goes ahead and Styles on Night in a 1v1, even if they lose the series, like, are we going to say it was Chovy's fault if he has a fucking banger performance against BLG, but they lose because Paze is a fucking bum?
Yes, they will literally do that. They already did it last year. But so they did that last year. So I know the answer is yes. Even though, as I pointed out, Faker will never be held to that standard, because Faker will always be clutch because he used to be clutch. Whereas Chovy, because he used to choke, will always choke. Do you see how it works? It's called like static narratives, that retcon. And here's the other thing. When you do this approach, oh fuck, where was I going on that? I had another angle for you.
Well, while you think about it, I will just say, like, even in this matchup, in the hypothetical shadow boxing of this matchup between BLG and Gen G, BLG does have legitimate win conditions in that they tend to play through bot side, and laning in bot has not been Gen G's strength this year, guys. It got better as time went on, but Paze and LeHens' laning has been a little bit iffy. And I will say, BLG really knows how to drive the knife in through bot lane, and then Jun's all in your fucking jungle, and then you're like skirmishing in bot side. It gets really fucking crazy down there a lot of the time. So do I think that stylistically this might be an answer for BLG, and Chovy could have a wonderful series and Keen could have a wonderful series? And is it still possible to lose? Absolutely. Absolutely, I think it is.
I've got the angle I was going to bring up.
All right.
This is, again, I'll probably make a video on my side channel about this topic. This is why Michael Jordan ruined sports narratives forever, because he simultaneously was the best player and the MVP and won the championship and then never lost in the championship final. So that makes real fucking human beings think you can just auto win if you're the best. That if you're the best, you just get everything, even though it's a team game. And so what happens as a result is they don't even understand. Take any other GOAT, Monty, and I can show you that is not at all. Like bonjwa, that's not how we apply it. So, for example, Wayne Gretzky didn't win the Stanley Cup every season. He was the best player. No. Messi won Ballon d'Ors in years where he didn't even win the Champions League, the biggest competition.
Dan Marino never won.
The problem is NFL fans say he can never be the best quarterback. That's the way it works.
He was the best quarterback in some of the years that he played. In fact, he had the famous first undefeated season. But he didn't win the Super Bowl.
No, he didn't. Oh. He didn't go undefeated. That was the 70s Dolphins.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
Yes. He still had a mega one. He still had one that was insane. Well, he set all those records, yeah.
So, he was, I think...
Oh, eye test tells you that guy was insane, mate. Yeah, he was 20 years
ahead of his time. The Dolphins were just fucking bums. I mean, Peyton Manning was on a bunch of, like, bum-ass Indiana Colts Indianapolis Colts rosters, and he was still like going to the AFC Championship game and stuff. I mean, famously John Elway too. Like the guys, I don't think you understand. The Broncos fucking sucked in the 80s, and yet they kept getting into the Super Bowl. And would they get blown the fuck out in the Super Bowl? Absolutely. But the only reason they were getting there was because John Elway like willed them into championship games. And that's a game that has, you know, many more players than basketball or League of Legends. So it is possible, you know, to get there and not actually. Also, John Elway has kind of garbage stats, if we're being honest, compared to all the other greatest quarterbacks of all time. He was just giga clutch. So, like, the thing about John Elway is you just have to use, if you don't watch John Elway's games and you just look at his stats, you're like, why is this guy even in the conversation? It's because the eye test got him there. Man. And his stats suck because he had bums around him the entire time. You know what
the nephews think? And also, by the way, he didn't play in the passing era. This is what nephews think. They think that, like, people like, I don't know, fucking Drew Brees is better than John Elway or something, just because the stats are 10 times better, aren't they? So, no, here's the other point I was going to make in that sense. The reason why Michael Jordan ruined sports narratives is because he made sports narratives into a movie. Remember, bro, if he hadn't come back for the Wizards, his last shot was a game winner to win the championship. Like, that's like a movie. That doesn't happen in real life. If you don't know, by the way, guys, people don't hit many playoff game winners. It's not a thing. Even the greatest players barely do it. So the problem is it made people do this thing that all nephews do, which is it goes like this, right? What's the most important competition? So in League, Worlds. What's the most important match in Worlds? The Worlds Final, right? Only Worlds Finals count. So now, unless you've won Worlds Finals, and lots of them, you can't be the greatest player ever. But shall I tell you an obvious problem there, guys? Why don't any of you have Wolf as your greatest support of all time? Tell you what, Monty, I don't always get that many, but there's one of my ones that's aged fucking insanely, hasn't it, my dude? Notice how nobody now ever puts him in those convoys. He's not even in them, mate. He's won everything. He's got an insane trophy cabinet, by the way. He shits on all my favourites, you know, fucking Mako. He has an insane trophy cabinet. Tell you what, though, no one ever hammers in the comp because the eye test doesn't check out. It's always about actually watching the game and seeing how good were they. I don't care if they win or lose. In fact, I've even said this. I actually sometimes dig it when a super sick player does ball out and then they lose the game. You know what the biggest irony of all time, Monty? We've mentioned it in the past. I actually do think the best Super Bowl performance by Tom Brady was the fucking Eagles one. He actually had to just straight ball the whole time and he didn't win.
And the Falcons one was pretty good too.
He won that one against the fucking Rams. That was insanely fraudulent if you want to be like star quarterback. Yeah, he did fuck all.
It was literally Belichick's like defensive scheme.
He just downloaded the Rams. Yeah, he just downloaded John for his brain and then just fucking beamed him, didn't he?
The Rams one was giga fraudulent for Tom
also,
Brady.
I'll just throw this out there. If you remember the match, you'll remember this moment. There was even a moment where one of the things, remember, we were hyped about was that was like prime Aaron Donald. He was going against Tom Brady. There's a moment in that match where Aaron Donald almost gets a sack and he runs over Tom Brady. Totally normal push, right? And the ref goes like, hey, like, calm it down with that. I'm like, it's a fucking Super Bowl, mate. What's even the point? This is just wrestling at this point. Just give him the belt then. It's just over at this point. My actual fucking goat tail like sack player isn't allowed to hit the quad, but then let's all end the game, mate. Like, what are we doing at this point in time?
Yeah. Anyway, so this is all a conversation about Chovy being a bonjwa player. Thorin has him as the third with rookie, which is very interesting. And yeah, I think for me, like, that's why I tweeted is it's like, how close are we? Like, I think there are arguments to be made that he is already. I think there are arguments to be made that he's close. You know, Wolf is like, you know, everybody just kind of knows when the next bonjwa is there. So Wolf's take is like, if you have to ask the question, then it's not there yet.
Right, let's address this. Well, I don't say yes for Faker then. There you go, dickhead. I've ruined your whole thing. Because that was a classic thing they said in StarCraft, Monty. They said the same thing. They said for real, Flash couldn't be until he won that 6th title. He can't be the bonjwa because some people disagree and say J-Dong. I've just told you, Wolf, that is never how it worked. There was never a council. What happened is after Savior, they retroactively gave 3 people bonjwa status, and it was never the thing of like, you have to only be the only one that's the best. on top. Because, by the way, here's one that'll blow your mind. Get ready for a school's in session, Wolf. Sit the fuck down. You weren't here. So what happened back in the day, you know I Love Oof, that bonjwa, he was getting clapped by I Love Oof sometimes, by July Zerg sometimes. In TVZ, the matchup that is biased to the Terran, he was getting clapped and losing finals and semis to this guy. So logically, I Love Oof never stood above all the rest all the time. It's a selectively chosen thing. And that last one is so whack. Because what it goes is, if you even have to ask the question, then he ain't. Well, then spoiler, by that logic, none of the League of Legends players are, because people did dispute Faker in his early years. People did go, but has he won enough time? Well, then that wasn't it then. He isn't undisputed. By the way, nobody is ever undisputed in any sport. I don't even know where that idea comes from.
And also, just in terms of titles, like Faker had a pretty dry run, you know, from the end of, like, basically from the beginning of 2014 when they went on that undefeated Champions Winter win. They then got clapped, you know, by the Samsung teams repeatedly throughout most of 2014. And then in 2015, you know, the time to show you're the bonjwa maybe was that game 5 against EDG at MSI, which you fucking lost, right? That was the legendary undefeated LeBlanc game against Morgana's Pons Morgana. And, you know, it was deft coming back to, you know, play against Faker one more time, even though he was on a Chinese team this time around, and like 2 of these Samsung players won MSI. And so there was kind of a fallow spell there for Faker for a while, honestly. And like, if he hadn't won 2015 Worlds, like, I think the conversation probably around Faker would be very different, because then he would have had 2 years of matches where he hadn't won.
Here's a fun one for you. I just saw a random chat. I did that mistake of scanning over to Twitch chat. So I'll just address this now, Monty, because I know people like to get on record real history. So I'll just give you some American football history. So the moron did the usual refrain, which goes like this. If you don't agree with me, you just didn't watch or don't understand or know nothing. So he said that you have to say the 28-3 Falcons comeback is the goated Brady performance. Here's why you are a cretin. Because are you ready? In that fourth quarter, are you ready? Because second half's one thing, right? Fourth quarter's really what you care about, right? So let's just put this up here. So some of the points was a Steven Gostkowski 33-yard field goal. Then Tom Brady threw a 6-yard pass to Danny Amendola. And then James White ran in 2 touchdowns to get to overtime and win the game. So 1 touchdown in the fourth quarter and overtime. And you're like, he doesn't even score the points, dickhead. He's not scoring those points. The kicker is scoring you know, the players with the most points in history, dickheads, are kickers. Are you aware of that? You make it sound like Tom Brady threw 5 touchdown passes that were 70-yard bombs in the fourth quarter because you don't know ball. You just look at the final score and your brain goes, in the movie, it would be Tom Brady. But in a movie, it's real life, my G.
Also, they won a Super Bowl based off of not handing off the ball to Marshawn Lynch. Just going to put that out there.
It's great. Tom Brady's so goated, he can mind control fucking Russell Wilson into throwing a short pass, which Bill Belichick checked already in practice. So we have to just do every sport like this. By the way, it's not because I know the most about these sports. Like, obviously, NFL, loads of people watching this know more about me. It's the way I break it down, you idiots. Like, what you have to do is figure out your principles. What makes sense? How do we judge a great performance? You don't just go, well, he fucking came back. Did Tom Brady come back? No, he didn't. The New England Patriots did. You fucking moron. Shall I tell you another obvious angle about that Super Bowl? What was stopping the Falcons scoring? Tom Brady? Was he fucking sacking fucking Matt Ryan all the time? By the way, do you know my favourite detail about that game? Is people have gone back and checked, and if they just kneeled on like every fucking player for the last like 2 quarters or whatever, they win the game. So Tom Brady could never have won that game. It wasn't a movie. He didn't will them to win. He did a really good job. Tell you what, he did a really fucking good job. He also, I will note, had a fucking running back score 2 touchdowns. Same way he run the Rams game, if people don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, we now know in hindsight, had the Falcons, like, I don't know, just run the ball, they would have easily won that game.
But also done that. Bizarrely, they did stuff like, here's the real problem. The Falcons thought they were in a movie as well, Monty.
Yep.
Shanahan thought he was in, and in his movie, we overcome the Patriots' comeback to throw a touchdown, and that's how we win the game. By the way, that's a super sick way to play the game. And I'll tell you what, Monty, the game wouldn't have been as good if they'd kneeled on every pass or run the ball. Wouldn't you much rather that everyone went for it, like that fucking Max Holloway fight everyone's loving, and at the end you just go fucking rocking, socking robots, and whoever wins, wins. That's what you want to see in sports. It isn't even about execution. Like, that's why winning sometimes, by the way, like the Falcons games, like the Rams one. Sometimes it's boring when you win. Bill Belichick doesn't care about excitement, guys. He just wants to win. He'll win in the most shitty, boring, grind-out game of all time. That's not what I want to watch, though. I want to watch fucking exciting games, obviously. Anyway, enough wrecking Tom Brady. Back to Faker.
I do love wrecking Tom Brady, though. It is one of my great pleasures in sports conversations because he is mad overrated. Yeah. So, back to the point, like LCK Finals, guys. We can talk about some of these games. What was your take, Thorin, on the quality of the series? Because it was the best LCK Finals we've had in many years, and was definitely one of the better ones of all time.
You know the problem with that, though, don't you?
Is they're all shit?
Because they play Gentleman's Handshake League of Legends, there have been some most LCK finals are dog shit. You know
terrible.
that. The semis are the killers. The upper bracket final, they're the fucking bangers. Because in that scenario, Monty, you go for broke. You got the 2 tournament lives at that point in time. You play crazily. The problem in the finals is pressure gets to you. You play boring. One team outdrafts the other one. One team does badly in the first 2 games. If they don't split a game, it's over. You might win 1 game in the 3rd one. If you split a game, then you lose the pivotal game 3. It's over. Like, the amount of those games that are just over after like 2 games. I will say it was probably the best LCK finals. You can have that. But
really?
People were trying to be like, well, what was a better LCK finals?
Well, I mean, I think like obviously the like KT versus SKT one, the Faker versus Ryu Zed versus Zed was up there.
I don't think that lives up if you go rewatch it. I'd say rewatch it on stream. I'd be interested to see what you say. I don't think that one lives up personally.
Well, I mean, no game from that era lives up, right? It's a very different. It's played at a much
lower even
level.
In terms of the excitement of the game, like here's the reason I've always said I thought Rocks Tigers T1 at season 6 World Semis is the best match ever. You can go rewatch that. It's still through it fire now. It's really good. Yeah. That's from 2016, boys. It's almost what's that, like 8 years ago? It's pretty good.
Summer 2016 between KT and Rocks Tigers. That was the one where the Baron was stolen by Smeb's Gangplank ultimate because Score missed his smite. A mistake that haunted Score until 2018 when he finally fucking won his first domestic title, which was pretty crazy. That was actually the last final I ever cast in League of Legends, Thorin, was that KT Rocks Tigers one. So that one is probably way up there in terms of finals that were great. So I would say, one of these 3 was probably great. But I mean, this one was a really good one.
I even think like people will forget some of the, like, I'll tell you another detail people will forget about this final is like, if you actually are like, I mean, for example, we're talking about Keen, we're talking about Chovy. Mate, that Canyon Kazakhs game was fucking genius. And apparently Chovy suggested the Kazakhs, and people don't know that in the interview they claim.
I mean, I think it was kind of a bait, especially because they banned it instead of banning the Cassante in the final game of the series, which was a little funny to me. And the Kazakhs, I think it was a risk, right? Because the thing
it was gangster. You could have lost the whole series on that game.
The last 2 like pick bans were kind of gangster by Genji in general. First off, picking the Kazakhs. Second off, leaving the Orianna up, right? These were both like pretty big risks that they took. But Canyon, like realizing that he might actually just be able to mind control Owner into 1v1ing him or like walking into him was pretty good. Like, I think Owner overestimated his ability and maybe Canyon just noticed that Owner was alone a lot of the time or trying to take these 1v1 skirmishes and thinking that, hey, well, if he does this and he's not thinking about it, he does this into me as Kazakhs, it definitely would affect him, right? But yeah, the lack of Cassante ban in the final game will haunt them because, as I've been saying, Keen is one of, if not the very best Cassante player in the world. And even after nerfs in playoffs and towards the end of the split, he was doing amazing things with this champion. So it's something that I think really Keen should have never been allowed to play, especially since it's a relatively safe pick as well. And the Kazakhs pick, like, I think it's a huge risk, especially with the draft that they were going for, because they have no crowd control in this draft. They have fucking Nami, Lucian, Aurelion Sol, Kazakhs, and Cassante. So if they're not getting picks with this or like forcing T1 to play into them, this could have been absolutely disastrous. Like, it could have been a fucking nightmare.
I'll tell you another angle. Here's an obvious one. What the fuck was Zeus doing on that Gwen? Someone explain that to me, please. That's another example of someone trying to be a hero. Matt Ryan started it failing.
Well, the thing is that obviously in isolation, the Gwen is a lane counter pick. But I think one of the issues is that if the Kha'Zix gets on top of you, right, there's still a potential for a huge amount of burst damage. And it didn't do anything within the team fights, really. So, I mean, it ended up being not a very good pick. And I think also, you know, obviously the Xin Zhao, like the way he works is like if Xin Zhao ults, he knocks away everybody. But if Kha'Zix is the one challenge, you're actually giving isolated damage to the Kha'Zix at that point in time. So it is interesting, you know, the way that some of these picks ended up working in this game. But this has, you know, the Gwen has been a good pick definitely for Zeus in the past. And it has been one he has favored into the K'Sante matchup. But they just absolutely couldn't get it done within that game. And like, I just think it was really risky to go for that Kha'Zix. But I mean, props to them. Like Canyon played it well and it ended up working out. But I think it was more because of T1's mistakes rather than anything else.
Do some viewer questions. I've got something to do at 4 o'clock in like 35 minutes.
Well, can we talk about LEC very briefly? Yeah, because like the LEC Finals also happened, and the reason why we haven't been talking about them is they were not very interesting. We're going to be honest. Like, I didn't even think G2 played very well in those victories. I was really disappointed in the way they played some of the lane swap scenarios, because especially in games where, I mean, look, let me put it this way. Lane swaps have changed. My knowledge of lane swaps may not be perfect because there's been a lot of shifts in the way that the meta has worked. And especially with the introduction of turret plates and things that didn't exist really in the main lane swap era. Like we have to G2 has been scrimming with the lane swaps. They may have more information about what works and what doesn't anymore. But I was really surprised that they were able to get a lot of early advantages and like take early turrets. And, you know, one of the core principles of lane swaps back in the day was that you need to bounce the wave off of the tier 1 so that the wave doesn't go all the way to the tier 2 and get frozen by the top laner, because you want to deny the enemy top laner and you want to instead have your top laner freeze the wave at your tier 1 to force the enemy top laner or the enemy laners to overextend into the lane without a tier 1 turret in it anymore. And what ended up happening is they push this tower and then like they deny Oscarinen and get big advantages for Broken Blade as he repeatedly dies on Sion in the bot lane, but he dies and gets experience. And then Oscarinen on the Zac in like game number 1 is just freezing at the tier 2 and he catches right the fuck back up. So there were a lot of principles that I found very puzzling as somebody who's watched lane swaps, about like G2 was doing such an excellent job of like playing the first part of it, but then they would just kind of give up all of their advantages. And I'm not exactly sure why.
Go on.
And then like on top of that, like, you know, I thought that the overall like level of play and like the throws and counter throws in this series was pretty low level as a whole. And like, I expected more out of G2, honestly, in these finals.
The problem is, no joke, I'd love to actually know what a G2 player thinks off camera, because I think that finals looked like what this year has looked like for G2. We can't lose to these motherfuckers. It can't happen. We can do anything we want.
Thorin, the information is there. In the 4th game of this series, when they are on match point, they literally run around trying to get Hansama a pentakill instead of ending the game.
Yep. They could have ended the game, yes.
They could have ended the game. The wave state was in a good place. Yike could have ran around and delayed Noah's recall. They could have, or at least been very close to ending the game. Like they could have knocked down a Nexus turret or two. You know, Thresh Lantern. I reviewed these games on my stream today. Thresh Lantern was there in the mid lane to take Hansama there into the mid lane. Wave was pushed up deep into enemy mid lane. And they're like fucking around trying to get Hansama a pentakill. That does not scream to me we are afraid of our opponents. Like, you literally can win the series based off of just walking into mid lane.
This entire weekend was about how Fnatic are not what you want them to be. That was the defining lesson of this weekend. Because one, they shouldn't even have won that series against BDS, but BDS is so toothless. They don't have the firepower to win the fights. And what you saw is this. All Fnatic has is firepower, Monty. You know that thing of like the idea of being trigger happy? The trigger is glued down the whole game. All they do is just fight. They take every opportunity. Now, what's hilarious is when they lose games, people criticize them. Why do you take these fights? Why do you do that? When they win a game and they beat a G2 or they win like a big team fight, oh my God, Fnatic are willing to go in and they're so decisive. No, they're not decisive. They go for every fight. They just go, like, as far as I can tell, for real, I actually would love to hear the full, not a highlight, a full game comms from Razork, because he plays like he's just going in no matter what, mate. He's just going demon mode all the way into them no matter what. Like, the problem is that style, if you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. And G2 is better than you at that. So they beat you. And they will beat you every time. And by the way, this is why I'm so fucking sad. Look, it's better than BDS going, because BDS would have had no chance. But this Fnatic team cannot beat anyone Asian in a best of 5. It is impossible. They will get, every fight they will get drawn into and murked. They will lose every river fight, every brush fight. They will lose fights at the Dragon for no reason. They will continue a fight after they got a kill. This team will get murked by anyone in LCK or LPL.
Oscarinen is also just bad. Like, I don't know how else to talk about Oscarinen now. Like, in the final, like, even in the games where he does well, such as the game 4 of this series, he fucked up so royally in terms of his TP, which was funny because, you know, we were talking about like the BDS strategy of doing the Scion dives last year. That's what G2 did exactly, except they did it with Zac. And the thing is, you try and trade TPs in that scenario if you are trying to do the dive with the Scion or the Zac and you are doing a jungle follow and the enemy top laner TP's bot to save you on the dive, then you TP into the top lane. But the thing that Oscarinen did was he TP'd too early and he didn't actually push the wave into the turret. So Broken Blade just fucking TP's into the top side, freezes the wave, and Oscarinen is insanely lucky to get out of this situation. In game number 1, if the wave had bounced and Oscarinen had never been able to freeze at tier 2 for free, he would have never been in that game, right? And you look at his scoreline and you look at the fact that they won and you think like, oh, he must have done well. He was basically like handed reprieves in these situations where he had no right to be in these games. No right. And he was making very critical errors in these scenarios that should have resulted in him getting absolutely bodied. And against good teams, he would. Now, the player who really stepped up in the playoffs was Jun. And Jun actually had a very good finals as well. His Renata Glass plays were really, like, he was fucking out there making plays. He was making plays with Blitzcrank earlier in the playoffs. Like, his Nico play was really good. Jun had the big glow up in my mind of these playoffs for Fnatic, and his engages were a big part of the reason why they were in these games. But like, fucking Oscarinen was actively bad, and like, he got away with murder in this series. So, I mean, I feel very frustrated about the way that this series went. And I'm going to try and talk to G2 a little bit and see if like there's something I'm missing about how these lane swaps went down. Because like, it was just confusing to me that this team, you know, with, you know, the knowledge that they have from the coaching staff, having been part of this lane swap era, would kind of like allow this to unfold the way it did, because these scenarios were like very obvious mistakes if you had played through that. And I know they've been practicing lane swaps, so you'd think that they would be a little bit more advanced and like be able to push the knife deeper than they actually ended up doing. But I agree, man. It looked like they, you know, G2, in spite of losing the first game of the series, looked like they could never actually, they didn't believe it was possible for them to lose to Fnatic. And you just see that because of the weird ass fucking penta at the end. Because that's a team decision. You know, it's not like I don't think that Hansama goes rogue and starts running around going for the pentakill, because Yike is like helping him get that pentakill. So clearly the whole team is just like, that's the call that's going out. It's like, go get that fucking penta. And there's nobody on that team that's like, no, we have to end the game. I mean, that's very tilting if you're a coach, I would think. Like, I can't imagine like Dylan and Duffman are like super psyched about this final. It felt bad. And on top of that, it was just like, it being in the studio felt bad, and then the gameplay level felt bad, and like the mistakes felt bad. I was very underwhelmed. And you know, to the point, Thorin, the players also feed off of the energy of it just being in the studio. And if it just feels like another day in the studio, maybe you do make that penta play. Like, my question would be like, if they're in a stadium, do they do that penta play? I don't know.
Badly, we'll never know.
the vibe matters. All right. Well, on that note, guys, we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will do some viewer questions for you.
Right, we're back for viewer questions. This is where people who support us by subscribing to our Discord, the Last Free Nation Discord, there's a channel there where you can submit questions, and we get through as many as we can, or select few, depending on the show.
And we got 20 minutes today, so a shorter one this time around, but we'll get through as many as we can. All right, starting at the top. On the topic of Starship Troopers, as it was briefly mentioned on the Total Recall episode of Foreplay, what is the more likely scenario? That the asteroid hitting the Earth is a plot hole, or that it's actually a false flag attack launched by a militaristic nation looking for a casus belli? After all, you don't seriously think the bugs are capable of issuing a precision strike on a planet from thousands of light years from a time before humans even left Earth, do you? So he's basically saying the asteroid was engineered by man to create a casus belli against the actual bugs. I mean, that's part of the charm of it, is like, you don't know what the purpose of the asteroid is in the movie. Like, it could have been a colonization asteroid onto a habitable planet, and they may have launched it thousands of years ago and like not even know that Earth was inhabited, right? I think that's one of the great things about Starship Troopers, is like, the bugs, you don't even really understand their purpose, and yet the humanity is like invading their homeworld insanely. So I don't know. I mean, it's certainly a possibility within the context of the movie that could be true. I like it as a take. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know enough. Obviously, like, from what's presented in the movie, there's no suggestion that the bugs have this technology or that they can launch things into space, etc. I would say, I don't really understand. Like, I feel like a thing that's missed there is the logic that, like, you require this in order to have war with another nation. Like, what's weird about that is, I would say, base take, most massive wars were launched on the basis of false flags. The false flag is for the public. It's not for you. Your reason to fight people is resources, land, space. You want to stay alive. You want supremacy. These are reasons to fight a war. So I think essentially that's just like the reason why people want that theory to be true is because it's like, see, the humans were the bad ones after all. And if that is your conclusion, I think you're just brain dead. So it's all good. I mean, ironically, the bugs wouldn't eat you, would they? You have no brains.
In a recent Get to Know the LEC Coaches video, coaches were asked the following question. You're building a roster and can bring back a retired player in peak form. Who and why? Out of any possible choice, MDK Melzet picked the legendary Giant Spanish mid laner Pepinero for his amazing AP Ezreal. I do remember him. The question is, you're building a roster and can bring back a retired player in peak form. Who and why? And he brings back Pepinero for AP Ezreal. I don't know why you would make that decision. That is crazy. I'll have to like look at the answer to that. But which player can you bring back in peak form? It has to be a retired player.
Easy. Flame.
Obviously, Score would be my answer. Let's bring back our favorite players. We just bring back our favorite players.
Yeah, why not? At least we picked actually credible players, not fucking Pepinero. He could even have picked fucking Expecke. You picked Pepinero. Mate, you know what? Miss me with that whole Bad Lions thing, mate. It stinks.
I have a question for Monty and a question for both of you. Monty, if you punched a world champion caliber boxer as hard as you could, do you think you could knock them out in one punch? It depends on the weight class. Could I knock out a heavyweight? No. Could I knock out a lightweight? Probably. But I mean, you have to remember that if they're a world championship boxer, they have an iron jaw and you can't train that. And probably I couldn't do it. So I'm going to guess no, especially if they weigh more than me, that would be very unlikely. For both of you, let's say you have a magical mirror that had the ability to show you one 30-minute clip of the past. It would be the unadulterated truth. So for instance, you could see how/why Stonehenge was built or what it looked like when the dinosaurs died. What moment from history would you choose and why?
First of all, I wouldn't choose some bullshit from like the early 20th century that's a fraud. And so I'd probably go some real historical thing. Like an obvious one would be, see, like if Jesus was real or not, something like that. You know, if you get 30 minutes, that's a pretty banger one, right? See if Adam and Eve are, these are the ones you'd want to go for if you want. I mean, look, I don't think reality works that way. Like, I don't think they're literal things, but it'd have to be something epic, right? You need something pretty cool, not just going for something famous.
Did Muhammad really go on the night journey? Right? Can I be there when Buddha reached enlightenment? These are great questions. These are great questions. I mean, honestly, like watching the Trojan War as it actually happened would be pretty rad too, to see, because like the question is like, how much does it align with the actual mythology, right? Was it as grand as they said it was? But watching like the fall of Troy would be pretty rad. With Riot's content platform going poof, will Last Free Nation swoop in and unveil their very own packed with exclusive goodies? No, we don't have the money for that. Imagine live interviews with Dagon straight from LCS. How much
have you ever played? The obvious question is, how much have you ever paid so far for LFN content? Zero?
Well,
why the fuck do we have the money to do this?
Yeah, they're paying now, so they're one of the people actually paying. They're subscribed to the Discord. Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to experiment with our own platform, but that requires more money than we have, unfortunately. If not Na'Vi, what are some fun alternative rosters you would want to see Simple join? My dream is a TL Homecoming. Isn't there rumors that Simple might go to G2 now? That's what I've been seeing washing around.
I haven't seen any rumors.
Or Cloud9?
At least not more credible. That was Monacy might go to Cloud9. Simple said he will never join Cloud9. They are all Russians.
That's fair.
I don't know how many more times people need to hear that. Like, I didn't make the world situation, but they have made it very clear that they're not going to go to teams like that. So what I would say is this. The obvious team I would like to see him join would be something like FaZe Clan. I know, look, he can't join these teams, so it's irrelevant anyway. But I want Simple to be on some amazing team where he'd be like crack, like him and Carrigan. I think would be an amazing combination. Like, because Carrigan only ever had an equal like that. Like, I want to see him have like the best player in the world and control him and set up all the duels and win the game. I'll tell you another good one. Here's one you haven't even thought of, guys. Why doesn't he go to Vitality? At the moment, Zemu doesn't even AWP half the time. Simple says he's willing to rifle. Why don't they take turns on certain maps, Simple ops, certain maps? There would be a fucking banger. All these players can play together. So the real joke is he can go anywhere he wants. He speaks English. Why he'd go to Team Liquid? You're American. I'm not American, so I don't give a fuck about that. So no, I wouldn't send him to Team Liquid.
What is your favorite CSGO tournament and CSGO roster of all time?
I think my tournament was, what do I pick normally for this one? I think I usually say maybe MLG Columbus. I thought it was just one that had a lot of like big matches, big storylines. It was the first $1 million major. And then if I have to pick roster, it's actually quite easy. Now it's changed because it got frozen. It was the lineup at the end of CSGO with FaZe, where they had Twists, Brokey, Rops, Rain, and Carrigan, because it was just the most exciting team I've ever seen play. Even when they lost, it would be amazing. And they could do the most insane comebacks ever. So to me, it was like high level CS and it was pure entertainment.
With the knowledge you have now and the skill of a top 20-ish player, you are teleported to an era of esports of your choosing. What era do you choose, and what would you do with your influence as a player to better that era? Which era would be the most enjoyable / fun? So we have the knowledge we have and like the mechanics of a top 20 player, like the skills. So what era do we go into?
I mean, it feels like you would do something like League, because in League, obviously, there's like massive like macro concepts, etc. That if you have, you'd just be years ahead of the game. So I feel like in that scenario, depends what way you want to go. Like, you could go to the LPL super early. They have the skills and just be like, here's how you win. Here's how you can actually beat the Koreans.
True.
You could go to Europe, take some of the best European teams and give them modern macro concepts. Maybe they could win worlds.
I mean, remember in 2015, European teams were making semi. There were 2 European teams in semis. Like, if you actually went back with modern macro knowledge into that time, it would probably be pretty crazy. You might have been able to win worlds as like Fnatic or Origin back at that time. That'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, why not?
So I am currently an electrical apprentice and am attending trade school. Some friends of mine who are college university educated have told me that I deserve less respect due to my education being not as high standard. How do you two feel about this? And do you think their opinion is valid? No, we don't. Because I decided to go the construction trade route. You can make a lot of money as an electrician if you're in the States. Like, you can make 6 figures as an electrician. It's actually very smart because you don't incur debt. And if you don't want to go to university, and you know, I've been to university, right? And like, I don't think less of tradespeople personally. I think honestly, it's smarter a lot of the times. You know, I hung out with people who are plumbers or electricians in LA as friends, and they made very good livings in a very expensive city. So I think it's totally fine.
I would just say this. All you have to do, my friend, is bide your time. In 10 years, have a look at those smug people with the degrees.
Yeah, true.
Let me know how they're doing in their life, because they are basically bragging about something they haven't even finished yet. What are they bragging about?
Yeah.
We haven't even said what uni they go to. Maybe they go to fucking bumfuck Idaho University. Who gives a shit, mate?
Yeah,
they're talking like they're like the top graduate at MIT or something, you know, like, give me a break.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is just university students. Of course, they get self-inflated.
Yeah.
Like, that's why they're at university.
Let me put it this way. If you are capable of attending an elite university and you choose to go in the trades and that's your choice, like, that's fine. But I don't think that's necessarily the best or optimized choice, right? But there's totally reasons to do that, including that you don't want to incur a bunch of debt and be paying it down the line. Maybe you just want to fucking chill, man, and have like a good life. And that, you know, there are people who work to live and people who live to work. I am one of the people who lives to work, and Thorin is too. Like, most of what we do is work, and we like it, right? But if you want to work so that you want to work a 9-to-5 job and have a good life and like do a bunch of shit outside of your work, then it's totally reasonable to go into trades. Maybe you just prefer being outside and working with your fucking hands. I don't know. So no, I don't. I think your friends suck, is what I think.
Most questions like this, like, my friend thinks this really stupid thing. All I ever think is two things. One, either tell them, let's just not talk about that and let's have a drink. Do that, or get better friends.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, Monty. I'm not trying to win over, but if people annoy me, I just fucking stop replying it. It's easy for me.
Many of my good friends that I grew up with didn't go to college, and they're still my good friends. You know, one of my closest friends literally dropped out of school in junior high and taught himself network engineering, and now makes more money than most college graduates, and he doesn't even have a high school diploma. So, like, who gives a fuck, man? It's what you do with your life that makes it meaningful, not what school you went to. I went to an elite university, and a bunch of people I know there are fucking bums. Like, I really disliked a lot of people I went to school with, and they did nothing with themselves afterwards. So it's just one phase of your life. But it sounds like your friends suck. No question. I just want to read an outrageous statement on 12-year-old Emma Watson by our old pal Roger Ebert. Okay, this is going to be weird. So he wrote a review of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. In the new movie, Harry, Daniel Radcliffe, a little taller and deeper voiced, this is the second Harry Potter movie, returns with his friends Ron Weasley, Rupert Grint, and Hermione Granger, Emma Watson, in the early stages of babehood. First off, like, Emma Watson is not an attractive woman at all. And secondly,
the casting is she's the girl next door. She's the girl next door. It's a casting point, isn't it?
Roger Ebert, what the hell, man? I mean, it is funny that he's becoming like the villain of foreplay. I do enjoy that. The Roger Ebert rants are hilarious. Is there a team you want to hate watch at MSI, or would have liked to if they were already
a real question.
Eliminated?
It's not even a real question right now.
Is it T1?
We have to put it in skywriting. It's obviously T1, isn't it? It's not even a real question.
I mean,
if you don't know, by the way, I agree with Dom. The saddest thing is this. If there were no T1 fans in the world, I would be a massive fan of T1, because actually they are mad plucky. They're actually better than the sum of their parts. They can be clutch sometimes.
It's just the fans who suck.
The fans just ruined it, because you just tell me 24/7 every single player's the best. It's just boring. Just boring. By the way, I had the same thing happen with the Patriots. I actually, because of Bill Belichick, I think the Patriots is genius. I think they're an amazing team to watch. But I fucking despise the fact, hey, some fucking dickhead from Boston. Just because we're from Boston, you don't understand, man. Like, we got the fucking Sam Adams. No, fuck off, dickhead. I hope you lose then. You know what? I hope you fucking lose.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great finals, because T1 is an amazing team at coming from behind. And it was a stylistic matchup where, if this was like a boxing match, like Gen G is the team with like the precision footwork and the nimbleness, and they're out there like testing you with jabs, and T1 is the team that just kind of shells up and they look for the opening, But that opening is like a fucking haymaker. That's the Baron play that they're making. And like, it is fun to watch T1 just like find that opening and just knock somebody the fuck out with one shot. You know, they take a bunch of shots in the process, but they're a fun team to watch in that regard. It's not my favorite style. I prefer the Gen G style, but it certainly is a very good, you know, it is a very good matchup. And like other teams that are going to be fun to hate watching MSI is probably Team Liquid. Because again, I like Team Liquid, as I think their macro's good. I like their coaching staff. I think they were very well trained, but I can't handle the fucking people who are like, APA and Yun are now good players. It's like, they're not.
Oh, APA talk shit, mate. Come on, homie. You're on the stage now. Start typing. Start typing while Knight's in that ass, mate.
Our friend, architect of Korean esports based Joe Marsh, who is now on his 4th consecutive title loss. Just going to put that out there. Would you consider the U.S. to be a banana republic?
I would.
Kind of.
It's just a mega scaled up banana republic. Because here's another thing about a banana republic. You don't give a fuck about your people. It's just about the elites and what they get. That's what America is, of course. Yeah, by the way, my country is as well. UK as well. You can have the UK too.
Let's see here. Looking to the future, how long do you think LoL has left being the most popular global esport? What kind of game do you think will replace it? It's impossible to say what the next game is, guys. Like, we never know what like all the next esports are based off of, like, esports are just based off of mods to other games. So it's like, who the fuck understands what is going to come down? I mean, do I think it has a long time left? It definitely has a long time left in Korea and China. Remember, China still plays fucking Warcraft 3 tournaments. So, and Korea still has Brood War tournaments. So like, it's going to be around, but how long is it the biggest esport for? Probably a while, just because of how big it is in Asia. But I mean, I do think without some very serious intervention and like combination with CB LoL, that North American will die. Europe seems fine. What do you think? It's probably going to be a while still.
I mean, it all depends whether you mean from a myopic Western view. Like in the Western view, LCS is probably dead in a year or two. LEC could keep going for a while, but it just, we don't know yet. I mean, if they can't ever get a fucking stadium full, how big is it ever going to be? So essentially it just becomes, will you watch LPL and LCK for a long time? I will. I'll watch them for 10 years if they're on. So potentially a long time.
Yeah. And by the way, when you say global league of or global esport, I mean, it's still going to be the biggest esport because Western viewership comprises a very small amount of overall League of Legends esport viewership. Like literally LEC and LCS could die tomorrow and LoL would still be the biggest esport in the world. So I don't know. Probably a while. Do you think League of Legends esports would have been more successful and popular if it had a different circuit, such as one with more events, both domestic and international?
Yes, 1,000 times. Yes, we said it for 100 episodes. Yes.
It was a big mistake to do what they did. How would the history of League of Legends look today if Riot's balance team had never killed lane swaps? I mean,
impossible to know, right? Might be too complicated. Maybe it would turn viewers off. I don't know, actually. On that one, I can't say. It's a hard one, right?
Here's the thing. It might have killed viewership. I like lane swaps, and I am totally willing to say that it might have fucked up viewership for League of Legends. Because I do think there is truth in Riot's actions where, you know, they are probably right that it needs to look like solo queue. And I don't blame Riot for their decisions. Like, it's a good decision to keep esports alive. I blame you, the fucking plebs, for not liking what I like, which is lane swaps. If you guys liked lane swaps, then they wouldn't have batched it out. If you guys hadn't whined and, you know, pretended that you couldn't do it in solo queue because you never actually fucking tried or attempted to understand the game at that level.
One of the reasons, in my opinion, why none of the Astralis majors are the most viewed majors ever is because they mastered utility in things like rotations and just dominated their opponents. Meanwhile, the reason all these other majors have had enormous viewership in the post-COVID era is because the game isn't like that. And it's incredibly like heavy hitting and like heavyweight boxing match where you're punching each other's lights out. That's what people want to see. So it's why actually, in my opinion, even if Brood War had been marketed, Brood War could never have had the success money that StarCraft 2 did. Because in StarCraft 2, everyone got to that Death Ball 200 army within like 15 minutes and had a massive fight. Yeah. In Brood War, it was like chess. It was too much of a build-up. And I think that could always only have had a niche audience. So I actually think in some ways, it probably wouldn't be as good for the game if it had the lane swaps. Even though I agree it's better.
Yeah, it's better from an expert perspective. It's significantly worse, I think, from a casual fan perspective. but I only care about me. So that's why I would prefer to have it. With the need for revenue at an all-time high, why has ProView been memory hold? I don't know, honestly.
I mean, I was a shareholder, and all I was told was that Riot, even though it made money, was like, yeah, but it doesn't make like infinity much, so can it? And I'll just say this right now. I put a real 10% chance that the fact I publicly have said so many times I invested in it is why they don't do it. I actually think for real, 10% chance, I think that's plausible. You know the Monty.
They're very spiteful. I don't think that's
They
crazy.
would cut off their nose for smaller things. And you know why it's mental they did that? Because that program was universally loved by pro players and coaches and fans around the world. Universally. So, you know what? Riot can't be helped. It's why I don't want to save Riot. People don't know this. I like League for the people in the game. Fuck Riot Games. I would love to see Riot Games just die a horrible death as a company, and most of them just fuck off in the rest of the industry and just get away from me.
I really enjoy your foreplay series, and you have introduced me to many great films I may not have seen otherwise. Would you ever consider doing power ranking episodes based around different directors, ranking their filmographies and debating about where each of their films lands on your individual lists? I think that eventually we should do some of that content because I think it would generate amazing algorithm engagement for the channel. Sure. So, I mean, like, you know, ranking directors would be really fun. And like, I think we would do that as like specials, right? That we would lead up to probably with foreplay. Like, I think maybe if we anticipate doing this, like we might do, for example, several series of the greatest directors of all time and then end it with like the debate show. It'd be fun. I think it'd be very fun. This is an interesting question, especially for you, Thorin. Does Reckless's autism diagnosis change the way you view his past behavior, given that it seems to be pretty prevalent in esports? How should autism be managed / discussed?
How dare anyone fucking ask me that question? I'm not answering it. There you go. I'm not answering
there
it.
we go.
Go fuck yourself. No one ever gave me 1 second of fucking quarter for that in my entire life, Monty, and I never used it as an excuse. The only reason I ever made that public was literally because a woman who worked on the staff at SK Gaming told me privately that she felt too afraid to ever come out as autistic in front of her colleagues, and I told her, I'm autistic too, so watch this, I'll come out and show you it's safe. Every second of my fucking life after that, people on the internet sent me hate messages, bashing me, saying insane shit, people in the industry, like they know someone autistic, and they don't behave like this on Twitter, like their autistic cousin has a 200k fucking Twitter account. And so I'm not going to fucking do this. When you find out soon what Reckless has done, if you think autism made that happen, you are a fucking imbecile. It doesn't make you a sociopath.
Yeah. Also, I mean, people. It didn't make people more sympathetic to you, Thorin. It made them weaponize it against you, which is
made them less sympathetic, mate.
Yeah. It's true.
So I would suggest for real, I would never suggest anyone come up with something like that. I would just stick to yourself. You know what? Just don't get involved in that. Do your own thing. Don't worry about it. Also, don't become a famous person, man. It's also not advice I would give to anyone. If I could go back and undo that, I'd do it tomorrow, mate.
All right. Final question that we've done for this week. Do you think the MR12 was an issue during the Copenhagen Major, and did it influence the outcome of the final?
It's just not as good. The main thing you watch Counter-Strike for are fucking gun rounds, and you get less of them. It's just not more as good pistols. A game. It just makes it more random, the elements of winning the game.
Why haven't they gotten rid of pistol rounds yet? Like, that seems the way to solve this problem. Right?
Because if you say it, every moron doesn't think about what it means. They just go, well, and then you can't get into the conversation, mate. You can't get into it. It's like that thing where the current change they've done to the kickoffs. What a brilliant change in the NFL. But you couldn't have done that in the fucking 90s, mate. Everyone would go, man, this is the fucking American. You can't change the game, man. Like, as usual, bozos are the reasons why we can't change anything, mate. So I don't get it. I don't get it myself.
Because pistols seem stupid. It's like...
They're all right, but they're not that great.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. We will not be back next week, very crucially, but we will be back for an MSI preview episode week after. So there's not a very long break this time between MSI. So we will take a week off and we will see you following week. I will round up some guests for you guys and we will do a big old preview episode for MSI. We return. We'll see you then.